Your Grace, I haven't shown you the hospitality you deserve. My king has married, and I owe my new queen a wedding gift.
Good morrow, wizards and wildlings, and welcome to Game of Microphones. I'm Lord Sterling, Sir Duncan, a.k.a. Mortis Noctu, and this is episode 71. And today we have a stacked deck with a full ensemble of familiar and new voices. I'd like to welcome our fantastic guests to the show. First, we have our good friend Travis, a.k.a. Obsidian Crow. Welcome back, Travis.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'm stoked to be back with all of these wonderful people. New faces, new voices.
Glad to have you here. You've been working on a project, right? Tell us about that and where we can find that.
Oh, yeah. So, make it really quick and brief. My friend and I were opening a leather goods and mead store here in Portland. We're doing a pre-order directly through our website, and the website is www.weirdleatherandmead.com. And weird is spelled Y-R-D.
It's spelled weird. It's spelled
weird.
He
yeah.
spelled weird. That's great. I can't wait to try your mead.
Yeah, man. Once we get our space and get our license, we'll be able to hopefully ship.
Nice. Next, we have our recent guest, Rachel, joining us from House Fox, Master of Dressage. Welcome back, Rachel.
Hey, Duncan. Hey, guys. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate being on today.
Oh, yeah. Great to have you back. And our recent guest, Sir Patrick of Hindsight, joins us. Welcome to a Game of Microphones, Sir Patrick.
Yes, I have accrued some more titles to my name since last we spoke. So I am now known as Sir Patrick of the Hindsight, son of the harp player, gazer of the Mirish rear view, wiper of raven poop, nibbler of Macumber's eye crust, wearer of the tinfoil bucket.
Tinfoil bucket. Killer. And for the first time on Game of Microphones, I would like to introduce our special guest, co-creator of the serial horror drama podcast Sirenicide, and our good friend Johnny Stitches. Welcome, Johnny.
How are you doing, Duncan?
Oh my god, I'm doing pretty well. Better now that we've got this call all sorted out.
I think that's Batman.
Welcome,
I'm
man.
not going to talk like this the whole time.
Just giving us a little taste of his character from Sirenicide. And you guys can find me on there as Malik Husto.
Running for mayor.
Check it out. It's a wild ride.
Oh.
Oh, man. I can't believe this is actually happening after so much, anticipation trying to get this call sorted out with technical issues and whatnot. It's happening. On this episode of our series Rewatch, we're covering Game of Thrones Season 3, Episode 9, The Rains of Castamere, and you know that the penultimate episode of Game of Thrones seasons tend to have something big, the death of Ned, etc. So,
Warning. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
what'd you guys think about this episode?
Sad.
Sad.
Right? Oh, man.
It lingers way too long. The end is way too long.
Leaving you in silence is just cruel, too, right?
That was one of the notes I made.
Yeah, me too.
Same here.
Oh yeah, I bet.
I've actually shielded myself from most of the sadness with a big thick sheet of tinfoil. So,
I was just amazed that the shock factor still holds up. I mean, I just watched it again the other night, and I was just like, I know what's gonna happen. Oh my God.
Oh.
Did you guys, were y'all impacted by the books first, or did you watch the episode first? Because I know everybody seems to be different that I talked to.
I had seen the TV show first. I caught up live with the show at the Mountain and the Viper, season 4, episode 8. And then I watched the next 2 episodes to finish off that season live, and then read the books during the off season. So I first experienced it on TV. I had heard of the Red Wedding, but I had no idea about like what would happen. So I was just totally shocked by that. How about you, Rachel?
I watched the show first. So I'm currently reading the books, and I have not made it to the Red Wedding yet. But I watched it first. I watched it with husband, and I just remember when the credits were rolling, we just sat there and kind of looked at each other. We were like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah, totally. Travis, am I remembering correctly? You read it in the books first?
No.
Okay.
I first watched the show, and then I think once John was season 5, waiting before season. No, it was about season 4. Between season 4 and season 5 is when I caught up on all the books.
Nice. Yeah, same here.
Also, Rachel, I should be wary. I had a note mentioned that happens in the books. So you said you haven't read the Red Wedding.
Oh, that's fine. Don't worry about it. I'm not afraid of book spoilers.
We'll just give the
good.
audience a few seconds heads up before you mention it, so they can skip ahead for a couple seconds.
Yeah, it was just about Greywind. That was all it was.
Okay, cool. And Sir Patrick, you are currently reading the books now, right?
Yeah, I just started Clash of Kings this morning, actually, and
Excellent.
I just get more and more into it. But yeah, I'm not worried about book spoilers.
You've gone deep.
I go on Westeros.org and Wiki of Ice and Fire and Aswaf's subreddit and all that stuff, and I look at people's tinfoil YouTube videos all the time, and yeah, there's so much there that like
I know
you can't really be spoiled because there's always more to see, like
right.
Even if you already know what's coming.
Totally. And what did you say, Johnny? Had you read the books?
I had read all the books up to that point. I caught the second season live, so I binged the first season, and then I was watching the second season, bored at work, and decided to download the first audiobook to see what the difference was between the first season I just watched and the second one. Like between what felt like forever, the weeks between episodes, those 5 or 6 days that felt like they stretched forever. My workload basically allowed me to burn through half of a Game of Thrones novel a week, which is pretty because it was like 48-hour books.
Yeah, totally.
So by the end of season 2, I was actually caught up like with all the books. But it seems like, I mean, that was 2012, 2013, and I haven't touched one since. So the books are a lot foggier than a lot of the TV show. The TV show seems to be more clear in my mind than the books do. The books, because I just binged them too quickly. It all just meshed together.
That happens to me too. I've got to go through the books again because I'll admit I'm getting a little rusty with my book knowledge, which is no good. So let's jump into our top 3. How about our new guest, Johnny Stitches, gets the first shot before we all take away his points and claim them for ourselves. What do you got,
all right.
Johnny?
Well, mine definitely revolves around my favorite character in the series. Ygritte's Heartbreak was my number 3.
Oh,
for a moment there, she was about to defend Jon when they're like, and his crow wife too, and so he pushes her down, kind of taking her out of the fight.
Right,
and
she's
then,
not with me.
Of course, yeah. Then Tormund grabs her and trying to shake her into reality, like holding her back. And then when he rides off, the look on her face was just like,
God, so intense.
God. But that was definitely my number 3, is just Ygritte's Heartbreak. I mean, it's the start of a catalyst for that arc. Into that moment, she feels like everything, I guess, he had been telling her up to that moment, it just kind of, her brothers proved, prove themselves right at that moment. It seemed like.
Yeah. How about that moment too when first of all, when he rides away, the look on her face is brutal. Her eyes are wide. It looks like a explosive mixture of pure anger and grief at the
shock
too. Yeah. But
just the disbelief of it. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. What I thought was pretty. Go ahead, Johnny.
I was wondering what you guys thought too. Like, whenever he says later, "You were right the whole time." I mean, is she in earshot of that?
I don't know. It seems.
I don't think so.
You know what that reminded me of? That's actually what I was just about to bring up. It reminded me of the moment in The Lion King when the Mufasa is about to be thrown down by Scar, and he like pulls him close and whispers something to him, like,
Long live the king.
That's so funny you say that, because I literally just watched The Lion King with my son today.
No way.
The Lion King is hands down my favorite.
Oh, it's anything James Earl Jones is right for me. Yeah, exactly. That's a good number 3. That was a very impactful moment. I would have to agree with that. How about you, Rachel? What's your number 3?
So my number 3 is when Arya is standing kind of out looking over the river at the Stark camp with the twins in the background. I love this scene because I feel like it's kind of a little bit of a foreshadow about what's to happen, because the Hound is talking to her saying, they're not going anywhere. They're going to be there. You keep looking like, they're going to leave. And I just love their back and forth. I love their ventures together. And, I love that Arya calls the Hound out on his fear of fire,
right? And
the Hound's calling her out on her fear of not seeing her family again, and they just have such a great chemistry together, and I just loved that scene.
When Arya calls him out and it says, "I know you're afraid of fire," I saw it, he's like, I know fear when I've seen it. I've seen it a lot, and she's like, well, I saw fear in you. I know you're afraid of fire. And she tells him the story. It reminded me of at the Hand's Tourney in season 1, when Baelish pulls Sansa close and tells her the story of how the Hound got his burned face, and he says, "Oh, but don't say anything to him about it, or he'll kill you," But he didn't kill Arya when she rubbed it in his face, pun intended.
No, and I think it's because he, he wants to essentially sell her back to her family. I mean, that's why he's taking her to the twins in the first place.
Totally.
But you can tell that, even during the Red Wedding, when after, she's hiding and he knocks her over the head, you can tell that he's genuinely wanting to protect her and get her home to safety is, as the Hound always says, there's no safe place anymore. Right. But, I really felt that you could tell in that moment Arya's not afraid of the Hound. She stood toe to toe with him, and he towers over Maisie Williams.
Yeah, it's funny.
And so I like that she, showed her sass and kind of her confidence in herself, and it was just a good scene in a really tragic episode.
Yeah, definitely.
I agree.
It just occurred to me that they're sort of like playing like an early version of the Game of Faces with each other in this scene.
Totally.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and there's even a part where he says something about like you can't hide behind that face.
Right. Oh, wow, that's a good point too.
Yeah.
So funny. And what I also liked about this scene is how Arya refused, she begged the Hound not to kill, the guy, the farm guy, right? And
the pig guy, yeah.
Yeah, and it just made me think of Arya as a character and how consistent they've been with writing her. This is the thing that basically prevents her from becoming no one in the future, and sorry, I have it written down here more eloquently. Where is it? Oh yeah, this is as dark as Arya gets as a character. She's still a hero. This scene shows that she still has an innate care to protect the innocent and to not kill those who haven't earned the stranger's kiss. It's something to keep in mind as we watch the development of Arya's character and this critical ability to discern and follow her own sense of morality, no matter the threat at hand, is the reason she never fully becomes no one at the House of Black and White, 'cause she won't blindly kill that actress, you know? And
Okay.
I'd just say it seems to me to be consistent character development by GoM.
She has a moral compass.
Yeah, and I think they did a cool job with this.
I have something to say about that. So the Hound, he lives by a code, and he says that he's not a thief, and later on, and Arya is just like, what, it's okay to murder people, but you don't steal, and he's like, every man has to have a code,
right?
And then then it's like when he breaks his code by like killing the farmer, or by taking the farmer's silver and basically leaving him to die, like. It's like he broke his code, and that's what he has to be punished for. But, okay, so in this scene, you see that he's eating the merchant's pig's feet or whatever.
Right, good point.
And so, did they end up just killing him anyway? Like, is this like something that happens off camera? Like,
I think they probably just left him lying there.
It's like he's taken his food. He stole from him. And
right,
it's like
stole his cart, stole his food.
You see him killing people and then just like scavenging from them all the time, like throughout, like and it's kind of like it's kind of like some sort of something that doesn't even like stand out all the time. Like if you're watching closely, you'll see that after Arya like stabs the one dude, then like the Hound like sits down and starts eating their food and stuff. Like but it seems like he'll take stuff from people he kills,
or just every fucking chicken in the room he'll take.
I just feel I feel like she would have brought it up, if like at that part where they're overlooking the twins when he's eating all that, like, and you still killed him, something like that. I think it's supposed to be ambiguous that he's alive.
Yeah.
I agree. I think he's still alive. What about your number 3, Trav?
So my number 3 is kind of more of the overall theme. This episode had a lot of firsts. Let me go back up to it. Hang on.
First wedding murder.
Yeah. So it's the first episode that King's Landing and here I'll just read the quote
that
here.
They're not in? Interesting.
Yeah, none of King's Landing and all of its associated characters and storylines do not appear in this episode, to focus primarily on the events at the Twins. This makes it the first episode not to have even a single scene in King's Landing.
Wow.
It's also the first episode that a single Lannister is not pictured.
Oh, true.
Reference.
Yeah.
Yeah, just referenced, yep.
Yeah, they were just, obviously the song was playing.
And Jaime Lannister sends his regards. Or whatever.
Shiv.
Yeah, Jux. Gank.
Sorry, the first mention of Jaehaerys, who reigned 2 centuries prior.
The Conciliator?
Yeah, Jaehaerys the first Targaryen.
Nice.
Yeah, so he was mentioned in this episode. That was the first time he was mentioned. It's the first, as I mentioned earlier, the first credit that was dead silent.
Yeah, so eerie.
Yeah, and just she gets her throat slit and then just thud.
Yeah.
And you're just like, what?
I've found that sometimes the most impactful stimulus can be the complete and total lack of stimulus itself.
Right.
Or like they give you all this crazy stuff and then they just leave you in darkness and just silence all of a sudden, and it's just like you're just reflecting and your mind is doing all the work. Mm-hmm. And just stewing on that last moment of chaos. I think it was a really effective tactic. What do you guys think about the silence at the end?
I really liked it.
Oh, that's fucked up. Okay, because it's like the Lannisters do appear in a way because the silence is...
I think it gives you a little bit of time to absorb literally like what just happened, because while it's slow, it's so like, I just remember watching it the first time, it was so shocking. I was having trouble like figuring out what the fuck was going on. Like all of a sudden everyone's dying and I'm like, wait, what is happening?
Your brain physically cannot process
and then
that.
The silence, it's like, oh my God, like Kat's dead, Rob's dead, Telesa's dead.
Young Eddard.
The baby's dead. Who the fuck is Roose Bolton?
Right? What the fuck?
Because I was still trying to like figure out all the characters and I'm like, wait, that was his bannerman. So I thought it was extremely effective, that silence.
Absolutely. As a musician, Johnny, what about you? What do you think?
I thought it was great. I mean, it's I know like it actually impacted us on like our personal podcast because we have a partner episode where I'm not gonna name it, but where someone dies and at the end I just had like torches flickering and then it fades into silence and I was like, oh, it could be like the Red Wedding.
Yes.
But what's cool is I did the rewatch last week and I did it again this week on the HBO Go thing through Xfinity or whatever.
Nice.
And they have that at the very beginning it says, stick around after the credits for a look behind the episode or whatever. And I thought, man, they didn't have that in 2013. I could have used that, like that Talking Dead kind of like counseling thing, because it really, I mean, yeah, exactly. Like, because I mean, it was nothing. It was silence, credits, and then okay, I guess I'll go to bed and get up for work the next day. Fuck, this sucks.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so funny.
I think it seems to sort of invoke like what Beric and John both said about the other side, about about having died and like what they experienced, and it was just nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. That's an interesting point. Yeah, what did you see? Melisandre asks John. Nothing. There was nothing. Oh man, that's crazy.
Yeah,
and
just, like, snuffed out.
Yeah. How about your number 3, Patrick?
I'm gonna say the wildling warging into his bird and attacking John.
Oh,
Orell.
Yeah.
Just related, just related to the tinfoil that can sort of be formed around there, because if you watch in the first season, when Eddard dies, right before he dies, he looks up and then it cuts to like the flock of birds that he's looking at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't see his eye roll back and turn white, but maybe it does that because his head stays alive after it's chopped off, like they're known to do.
Ooh, interesting.
For like 20 seseconds.
Who's that guy that did the experiments where you would cut off people's heads, like people in France, I think, during the French Revolution, they were guillotining all kinds of guys, and he was doing experiments trying to get them to blink after the heads got cut off. Oh,
yeah, and he was able to.
Yeah, it's hardcore.
Did you notice the bird? You could still hear the bird up in the tower flying around after that whole scene.
Oh wow!
When Bran and when they were all talking up in the tower trying to calm Hodor.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't notice that.
You can still hear Orell's eagle like screeching because Orell's dead.
Yeah, but he's not really dead. He's an eagle now.
Yeah, maybe he's in that thing.
Yeah,
he's up there squeaking. See, I was right. Look what I see. Look.
Yeah,
it was the thunder.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of how the Talking Dead, how it's like a post-show therapy session for anybody who would like that type of experience for Game of Thrones. I know they had After the Thrones, which I wasn't too sold on it, but what I've been doing is tuning into Behind the Iron Throne. They have a really good post-show live show that they do, which they stream live on Facebook, and also post-show recaps. Game of Thrones podcast has a good one too. Just options for people out there if you need something immediately after that when the credits roll. Those are 2 really good options.
Cool.
Okay, so I have a question since we're on that scene. So Bran wargs into Summer and Shaggy Dog, and they like start attacking the wildlings.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that's really cool.
So cool.
Wouldn't John notice that there are 2 other direwolves aside from Ghost, like ripping the throats out of people? Like I rewind.
I think he did.
I think he
did.
Yeah,
I rewound it like a couple of times because he watched that guy's neck get all chewed up.
Right, and he's like, "Whoa, is that Summer?"
Like nothing kind of came of that. Like I just found it kind of weird wouldn't he think twice, like, oh my God, maybe Bran and Rickon are somewhere around here, because
he knows those wolves. Yeah.
He knows the wolves, and they're still, I believe they're still south of the wall. And going back to like the first episode, there are no dire wolves aside from these 5 puppies
right
south of the wall. So like, I just thought it was kind of odd that he saw them, but maybe he was just like, and there was so much shit going on that he couldn't focus or figure it out.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was kind of interesting, like that nothing ever really came to fruition from that.
It's funny that you mention it too, because the same sort of thing kind of happened with Bran. He wargs into Summer and he's down there ripping guys' throats out, and he sees Jon, and then it's so much stuff was happening that it like kind of took him a couple minutes to be like, oh yeah, hey Rickon, I totally just saw Jon down there, fighting with the wildlings. I tried to kill him.
I mean, I just thought it was kind of interesting because, like, I mean, Jon's face wasn't even like, what the fuck? It was more like, what is happening? But those are clearly dire wolves. They're.
I think at that point
dogs.
It's like, it's like, who's he gonna tell? He's gonna get back to the wall, and nobody there has ever met Bran or Rickon, so maybe it's just
That's true.
He just didn't have an opportunity to bring it up really to someone who would understand the significance of it. But yeah, it's conspicuously absent any mention of that in the future. It would have been cool, for instance, when he gets reunited with Bran back at Winterfell. That hasn't happened yet, has it? Has he seen Bran?
Nope.
No.
Maybe
no, because Bran arrives when Jon
after he leaves
and
goes to Dragonstone. Right.
Hello, Sansa.
So maybe
it's so beautiful on your wedding night.
yeah, so creepy. Cyber Bran. Maybe when Jon is reunited with Bran, he'll be like, oh, thank you for saving my life south of the wall that one time when when Summer killed that guy.
By the way, you slept with your aunt.
Yeah, how do you ease that in the conversation? So my number 3 is Walder Frey, and specifically the naming of the potential wives.
I'm married.
So funny. Yeah, there's Sarah and Waldra, Welra, and no, it's Mary.
Wait, I was going to bring this up. You mind if I read the list, Duncan?
No, go for it.
So, Walda, I can't even say that. Arya, Jorah, Walda, Janera, Nayla, Sarah, spelled with E-N, and then another one spelled with
granddaughters, twins. You could have had either. Yeah. Could have had both for all I care.
Marianne, Freya, Mary, Shiri, not Wendell.
Bertha,
I think that was
Eldra, Waldina.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great. He's such an old, disgusting man, and he can't do anything without being grossly offensive in some variety, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote down a few of my favorite quotes for the episode.
Nice.
And my top 2 were Walder's, which was, "Old eyes." Oh, I just love that.
All right, come closer.
Old eyes. And then, "A wedding needs a bedding." I mean, he's just got the best lines of the episode.
He really does. He's got so many great lines throughout this whole thing.
Liked "The King in the North arises."
Yeah, that was a good one too. Oh, he's such a prick. And I think it's worth noting that at the beginning of this scene, when he honored guests, welcome within my walls and at my table. I extend to you my hospitality and protection in the light of the Seven. He willingly and vocally extends the protection of guest right to them, and you can see that there's a plate being passed around with bread and salt, the symbolic plate. And it even stops right in front of Walder at one point, and he takes a piece of his own bread. So, the northern custom is that when somebody goes to your house and you feed them bread and salt, they are then protected by guest right, that the owner of the property does not have the right to murder them specifically. So I just thought it was, telling and poignant how very clear they made it that guest right was being afforded to these people as they arrived, and they said it and they visually showed it with the plate being passed around. So it's even more messed up, that when the right is violated at the end. Were you going to say something, Johnny?
No, that was right on the head, man. He's just an ass, man, but the best at it.
He's so awesome at being an ass, too. Yeah, total perv.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry, guys.
Right. No, it's all good.
We were just talking about objectifying women, so welcome back.
Yeah, Walder being just a horrible person.
Well, what I was going to say, since Duncan said that Walder was like his favorite, or his top 3, or number 3, I should say. I really focused on his costume. Oh. I have a friend, shout out to Jack Blair, who cosplays Walder Frey.
That's a good one, too.
And my God, it's like so uncanny. Like, I'll send you guys all a picture and maybe send it to Duncan to post or whatever. But he tracked down the maker who made Walder's his whole like get up, and so some of the trimming that is on his robe, Jack was able to find off the same wheel that was used for the show. He found like 3 yards of it or whatever, and he bought all of it for his costume because it's the other half of that was used on Walder's, the real Walder in Game of Thrones.
That's killer.
Insane.
And
that's dedication.
God, Jack is he can transform into like the Walder, Dumbledore, Gandalf.
He does
like
a
every
number
time
of them.
Does something, Theoden from Lord of the Rings, like every time he does something, it's like it's like a mask. Like
he's like a faceless
I don't know how he
man.
does it. I'll show you guys.
I was about to say the faceless man.
Yeah,
great.
the faceless man. Yeah.
Wow.
But
Patrick, you're programmed to notice all faceless man references.
Yeah, no, I'm constantly on the lookout for all tinfoil and references and symbolism. And
So,
Patrick, I'm going to send you some tinfoil in the mail. Just like a whole roll
like
of
literally
it.
tinfoil.
Okay.
So let's break down all of the instances here a little bit where Walder is despicable. First of all, he references the twin granddaughters, saying that Robb could have had either or both for all he cares, and Edmure just kind of like, ugh, like closes his eyes and turns his head. The look on his face is just pure disgust. And then, he's horrible that he can't even remember the girl's name. And, she says,
he's just like,
I'm Mary. And then he's just like, fine.
Mary, fine.
Yeah, fine. And then the next one, his youngest daughter, Sheree, though she hasn't bled yet. Clearly you don't have the patience for all that anyway, since Robb, didn't have the patience and married somebody else. And then he's objectifying Talissa, calling her forward, talking about, how if he could see
everything
what's
stays in
dress.
its place.
Right,
I can always see what's going on beneath the dress.
And that's supposed to be charming.
Oh, gross.
Oh man, and like the way when he like is like talking about how like everything stays perfectly in place when that comes off,
doesn't move 1 inch.
It shows like
in a tight fit.
Yeah, tight fit.
And then the shot just shows Robb, Talissa, and Kat, and they're like not reacting, but like their non-reaction to it just really like reveals their tension, and like just the fact that Kat there as an older woman is there while he's like this guy's like undressing the woman next to him and talking about how nothing moves. Oh, that's
and it's
perfect.
the
That's
fucking
the way
queen, dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, god damn, you got the queen in your hall and you're like talking about her fucking tits and like
He would have broken 50 oaths to get inside of that.
right. Oh, that's hardcore. Telling the king that. Like, god damn, he's being outright disrespectful, like kind of foreshadowing or, telegraphing his future move during the wedding itself. But, it's crazy, man. Like, that is next level.
He's such a creep.
It's funny how, since you mentioned like how he kind of like is telegraphing, it's like when you go back and look at this episode, everything is telegraphed. Everything, like, we should have seen all of this coming, like there's the only reason, like, we're conditioned by traditional tropes to, expect things to work out for the hero.
Right.
And we should have known after Ned, but then and then also just it's like what we want to happen. Like and we're sort of in the same boat as Robert and Kat, where we just want things to work out so much that we're just sort of like fingers crossed and holding on and being like, oh, this just has to work because it just has to.
They're just making us think it's going to go bad like they usually do, and everything's going to be fine. And it was just last episode when we got the full explanation of the Rains of Castamere from Cersei, who explains
which is totally
the story
a setup for
like
this.
that. Yeah, exactly.
Wiping out a house.
Yeah.
And I think I've read enough of the books to know, like, the guest right, like eating the bread with the salt, that kind of solidifies like your guest right, and that's why they kind of panned in on the bread and salt, and you watch them each take a bite and dip it in the salt, and I think it let a lot of the audience's guard down a little bit, because you see physically, like, Walder's eating the bread and salt, Talissa's eating it, Rob's eating it,
Rob's devouring it.
Talking about how in the future their houses could be friends again, and like toasting to it, essentially.
You kind of get like lackadaisical when you see that a little bit, like, oh, okay, well, he's offering them guest right, so. But then what I loved is Walder Frey at some point, he goes, the wine will flow red.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And
it hit me too.
I was like, oh my God.
That's not the only thing that'll flow red.
Yeah. But I will say, when Talissa started telling Rob about, like, if it's a boy, I'm going to name him Eddard.
Yes.
Even when I first watched it, I was like, oh no. This is too good to be true. This is not a show that has happy endings. You're mentioning Ned Stark, who died in episode 9 of season 1. And I got like a really uncomfortable feeling. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen, but I thought, like, uh-oh. They're daydreaming. They're dreaming about a better life. They're dreaming about their perfect life. And this is not a perfect life show. So I started getting like anxious at that point, but I still I had no idea what we were in for, but I just thought to myself, like, someone's going to die. I didn't think all of them were going to die.
Right.
Oh my God.
But I thought someone's going to die.
And the thing too is that, like, at that moment, for the audience, we're all like, oh God, she invoked the Ned, and something bad's going to happen. But for Rob, he was probably more in love with her at that moment than he ever was, when she suggested that. It was like the best, most obvious choice for a name. And he was just like, oh my God, like, this is perfect, I said, boy, if Rob didn't love her already, this cements it, that line. Naming him Eddard, but also it unfortunately cements the fate of young Eddard as well, because it seems that all Eddard Starks are destined to perish prematurely. Unfortunate pun in this case intended. I apologize for that.
Well, drawing also another parallel is, Talisa and Rob right there, they were sitting really close to the table, and Rob kind of leans over later on in the episode like he wants to kiss her and kind of hug on her. And she says, don't do that. That would insult him, and looks up at Walder. So even in that moment, you got like this ultimate goodness going on between this young pregnant woman, like, and that, because that's basically the moment they could have had like a last kiss kind of thing, and they knew what was going to go down. Man. And she stops it just to like pay respect to where they're at that point, because she knows she already feels like she's insulted this guy just by being there.
Right. Good catch.
I saw that, and then at that moment, Catelyn looks over and actually grins because she sees how close they are at that table when she's sitting next to Bolton over there, and it's like, oh man! In that moment, she's finally accepting her daughter-in-law, and
You're so right too. That look on Kat's face, she was like, probably thinking about her and Ned, seeing it with those two, like, and you're totally right about that.
I think the love is tangible, like, in that moment, because like you said, Johnny, she kind of like stops him to be respectful, but their chemistry and their love emanating from each other, like, they don't have to be like physical with each other to feel that. Right. Like in the room, it's probably tangible, and the energy that they're emitting from their bodies, like resisting each other but loving each other at the same time. I think Kat was feeling that and happy that her son has found that in his life. And at this point, you know, all is well. Like, her brother, I like to call him the flaccid fish.
The floppy fish, yeah.
You know, he's eating blackberries out of Rosalind Frey's hands. He bitched about the whole time. He's happy. It seems that Walder has forgiven her son. They have an ally back to go attack Casterly Rock. And her son is in love, and they have a baby on the way. It's like there was a brief moment of life is
This
good.
might work.
On
Everything
her
is
face.
working out. And you referring to the flaccid fish, are you making a book reference there?
No.
Oh my god,
No,
that's so
I
funny
just
because that's the thing from the books. A singer once
really?
sang a song about Edmure about a floppy fish.
No,
And
I haven't even gotten to Edmure in the story yet.
it's amazing. That's so funny. I just
That's
had a
great.
feeling
Awesome.
that since you said flaccid and not floppy, I was like, this is a coincidence.
Because he's such a gomer. He's so like, oh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna get a kick out of it. What were you gonna say, Johnny?
I was just going to say, I mean, it's true. And in that moment, you know, I'm sure Rob's even more in love with her because she's being all stoic and respectful in that moment. And he's the son of Catelyn and Ned. So, I mean, it's like, you know, you found that and now you're in your woman. Because she could have just easily just leaned into him and kissed him. She's the queen, you know, but she
Right.
didn't. She, you know, she's just all about respect even in that moment of
Yeah.
all the joy and jubilee.
Yeah,
Good call, definitely.
I can kind of relate to that because sometimes when I'm like, you know, out in public at like gatherings with my wife or something, and like, I don't know, we're just so in love, and like we have to kind of like not try like not to rub everybody's face in it. Like,
Right.
oh, that's sweet.
yeah,
Funny. Good for you.
but yeah, see.
Oh man, that's great. Anybody else have anything else to add to that Walder Frey stuff, or should we move on to Johnny's number 2?
Well, before we go into that, I got one last Walder Frey thing.
Right.
The look that Walder Frey gives Rob when Edmure's cloaking Rosalind, like, hey, you see that? Stupid.
Yeah, you
motherfucker."
coulda had
like,
that.
It just, he like hangs his tongue slightly out of his mouth at him.
He's so gross.
Like, fuck you. And I love how he shows Rob, like what we were talking about, going through all the lists of his daughters and granddaughters. They're all just like, you know, not the most beautiful women in the world, but yet Rosalind is nowhere to be found on that list when he's showing Rob.
Right.
And then he purposely covers her with a veil, which in the other weddings doesn't seem to be like tradition.
Right. Yeah.
So he's purposely keeping her covered. And like you said, the look he gives Rob, and Rob's kind of like, damn. Like, oh.
Remember he even says to Talisa, maybe I made a mistake. You know?
Yes. Because in striking your king is treason.
Yeah.
And even when Rosalind's walking down, when she's still veiled before we're shown how pretty she is, in that moment, Walder manages to be trolling Rob and Edmure at the same time.
Yeah. That's true. His troll
just
game
great.
is next level. Oh my god.
You can tell what a fucking scumbag he is just by just how miserable his daughters all look. Like
Yeah,
they all
right.
look like they are living a life of like just absolute
Well, they're
misery.
like 40 years old, and they're probably all virgins. So, I mean, how can he be like super happy?
And you mentioned that they're not necessarily all the best looking women. You know that must suck to be an actress and be like, we need an ugly girl. You want it the part? You know what I mean?
I really, it's like it's sort of it's mostly done in makeup though. Like it's really
Yeah.
played
A
down.
lot of the
true.
times it is.
Like Gilly.
Yeah, Gilly is gorgeous
Or
in
even,
real life. And I
Osha.
read this article, like, to make herself look a little bit more, I think she used the word, like, simple and plain. She, like, relaxed her lower jaw so her mouth would kind of, like, hang open a little bit. And it changed, like, her whole facial structure.
Yeah, she like
doing
pushes her
it.
jaw forward a little bit. Kind of, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. She just, and the way she held her face, like,
Artificial dirt
kind
face.
of. Yeah, so I mean, but you see her in person or like, you know, not in character, and I mean, she's gorgeous, really beautiful woman.
That's cool. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really seen her out of character much. All right, shall we?
I mean,
Yeah, they're.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say she's really pretty. Like I'm not saying like she's drop dead amazingly gorgeous, but she's certainly way better looking than how they portray her as Gilly on the show.
Nice.
It's almost like, I mean, minus the incest thing, the parallels between him and Craster, like their attitude towards their
Right.
offspring.
Yeah.
It's like they're just nothing, just, you know, just they're just here because I put them there, kind of thing. Yeah. I'd say my number. Right. Yeah, definitely. They're just something for their pleasure only, or to be bargained with to gain more favor in Walder's land.
Livestock.
Very clinical.
Did you guys, for those who have read the books, do you remember the whole like Frey interpretation of what Walder did? I don't know if you. I know Duncan.
Wasn't there?
Not sure, actually.
Like a argument amongst them up until that point or something?
Like the way that they're defending their father's actions or their grandfather?
Yeah,
I
found it.
What did they say?
It's like a conversation between Davos and a random Frey.
I just found this today.
Yeah.
No way.
He's here. I'll just read it because it's pretty great. So there's this Frey named Jared. Jared the Frey. Okay. The Red Wedding was the young wolf's work. He changed into a beast before our eyes and tore out the throat of my cousin, Jingle Bell. Pretty weird name for your cousin.
Oh, yeah, he's kind of a fool, sort of.
A harmless simpleton. He would have slain my lord father, too, if Sir Wendell had not put himself in the way. And then Davos says, "Is it your claim that Robb Stark killed Wendell Manderly?" And then Jared says, "And many more. Mine own son Tytos was amongst them, and my daughter's husband. When Stark changed into a wolf, his Northmen did the same. The mark of the beast was on all of them. Wargs birth other wargs with a bite is well known. It was all my brothers and I could do to put them down before they slew us all."
Wow, that's
Davos says, "Yeah, it's pretty
hardcore propaganda."
And you know how Davos is.
Yeah.
So Davos is.
Yeah.
His reply is, "Sir, may I have your name?" And then Jared says, "Sir Jared of House Frey. Jared of House Frey, I name you a liar."
Oh, that's
It's
great.
just like a backslap. And, you know, at that point, Davos is not really for
Prominent.
House Stark yet, you know?
Yeah, at all. He's totally House Baratheon at that point.
Yeah.
That's
He
crazy.
does how to sniff through bullshit.
yeah, definitely. That's why he doesn't trust the Red Woman either. You know, he can tell
Yeah.
something's
I really wanted
afoot.
that in the show. The whole scene with White Harbor.
Oh my
Wyman
god!
and
Did you tell me about it?
Frey pies. And I don't want to get too far into it because we're not talking about
Wyman
it.
Manderly is severely underused on the show, criminally.
Yeah.
Sir Too Fat to Sit a Horse, or Lord Too Fat to Sit a Horse.
So this is the part where we all do the choir of, the Rains of Castamere, right?
Or we could do the Bear and the Maiden Fair, because that was playing during the betting.
That's true.
Was it?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I
It
didn't notice that. Oh, man.
It's perfect for that too. Like, you know, it's all about like a bear pawing over a girl and whatnot.
Oh, man. Okay, that's just another thing that solidifies Walder as just a creepy,
Sick
dirty
fuck.
guy. Because, like, that song is so raunchy. The only times you can hear it are when it is sung by, like, a folk punk band or belched by a Molestown whore or played at a Frey wedding.
Totally. How about your number 3, Johnny Boy?
All right, so my number 2 is so close yet so far away. No, it's fine. So close yet so far away. I put the theme, and I got a couple bullets on it. I'll just run through real quick, and we'll talk about them.
Perfect.
First one is at the beginning. You know, you see Robb is on his way to like total victory at this point. Like it's looking like they're going to be able to defeat the Lannisters. They're going to get what they
Yeah,
need
they're
if
going
this
to take
goes through with
Casterly
Walder.
Rock.
Right. So like everything's at his grasp, and then you got the other parallel, Arya looking over at the twins. You know, so close to finally reuniting with the family, yet it's so far away. And later, even closer when the soldiers are all happily feasting right before they get slain, like just
Inches. Like she could reach out and touch Winterfell
just
soldiers.
inches, exactly. Bran in the tower, so close to Jon Snow, like we talked about earlier. And then again, even what I was talking about earlier, the smile Catelyn was given Talisa finally accepting Robb's happiness, like it's finally there, like. And then of course to me the Hound saving Arya. You know, I mean, it's just all looped into like so many things that have been built up to this moment that have been stretched out over that season. Conflict with, Catelyn and Rob with, his love choices. What are we going to do about the Freys? Like all this stuff just like rounding out, and it feels like it's going to round out in the most memorable way possible, in a good way, so
Yeah,
I guess
totally.
that's my number 2.
Nice.
We were really well written episode.
Agreed.
Well directed too. David Nutter did a really good job on this one.
Oh, it was David Nutter? Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does some good ones for sure. That was good.
What else did you do?
I don't remember, but I know that I have a positive association with the name.
He's done the main thing I remember him from is Band of Brothers.
Oh man, I love that show.
Yeah, and the Pacific. Yeah, he did both of those war series, and he's done a lot of X-Files stuff too over the years.
Stellar cast in Band of Brothers. If you guys want a good war show, definitely watch Band of Brothers.
Yeah, apparently he's doing some of the Lost in Space series. I haven't watched any of that on Netflix.
It's pretty good.
All right. Well, that was my number 2, so.
Nice. You want to go ahead with your number 2, Travis?
Sure. My second one, I mean, it's kind of short. I just really liked the scene with Sam and Gilly reaching the wall.
Oh, nice.
And it was Sam the Wizard.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
It's just-
particularly funny because where does it at Castle Black or something? Somebody asks him, he mentions in some context that when he was a little kid, he wanted to be a wizard.
It
when he
was
grew up.
Right.
It was when John was like pouting about how he wanted to be a ranger.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
like a wizard.
You're like a wizard. Sam the Chick Slayer.
Totally.
No, it was just the kind of like the foreshadowing and showing like how in depth Sam is with books and reading, and how foreign, or I guess how common non-readers are in this world. Because if you think about it, like in our world, pretty much everybody can read.
Yeah, it's crazy. It triggers a realization at that moment in that scene where like just like how much knowledge is power, and how how screwed you can be without that capability to store and share and catalog knowledge.
And
so it's interesting.
makes
to,
you take it for granted a little bit, like
you realize you've been taking it for granted for sure.
Yeah, and and just the little bit of foreshadowing. She's like, you read all of that in a book, and then, and then, and later on in the series, here she is trying to tell Sam about the secret marriage between Rhaegar and Lyanna, and
oh right,
she's actually reading reading books and
that's
reading
great.
those
It's
words.
so cool
So
that
then-
the situation like totally reverses. She like ends up being empowered with like, that capability, and that's so cool. It's so funny too. She says, "You know all that from staring at marks on paper."
I want to be a wizard too.
Yeah, it's
I
like
loved when she called him a wizard, because I can't remember what episode it was, but Sam told John at Castle Black, he's like, well, I always wanted to be a wizard.
Right.
And the look on his face when Gilly said that was just like, oh my God, it's so sweet.
Yeah, Gilly said
You're a
something
wizard.
Sam really liked. Talisa said something Rob really liked. John didn't really do something that Ygritte liked, though.
No, she was
No.
pissed.
Did you guys notice the connection between Samwell and Daario Naharis in this episode?
No.
It's just that they both have like this wild secret knowledge that helps them bypass a giant obstacle. Sam knows of the secret path under the
good
night
catch.
fort.
oh,
And Daario knows how to
Good
infiltrate Yunkai, and
You're
just
talking about Daario 1, right?
yeah, Eurotrash Daario or Fabio Naharis.
Fabio Naharis, I love him.
Fabio That's great.
Oh,
Fuck
that's
yeah.
great.
So yeah, I love that scene too. Great It's just, society and people can become so crippled without that capability to catalog and store knowledge. So it's just a really important moment. And it is like a wizard-like power, really. It's pretty badass. Just the capability of the mind is it's pretty cool.
And it kind of shows kind of like how imbalanced the power is, how like the maesters sort of have this like, they control all the information and they shape how everybody like sees things and like what.
The maesters are like Westerosi Illuminati.
Yeah.
Secret occult knowledge that they use to manipulate the world at large.
just like so like when you think of like how much knowledge can just be lost when a civilization gets wiped out, and like how many times like things could have been invented, and like all the things we don't know.
Right. I've talked about this on the show before, that like the most horrible, one of the most worst, like the worst instances in history is like the burning of the Library of Alexandria. And the show is like poised precariously with their own version of the Library of Alexandria, which is the Citadel Library, right? So I have a bad feeling that something's bad is going to happen to the Citadel Library. If not on the show, then in the books.
Yeah, definitely. Like it's like right by the ocean or something.
Yeah. Oh yeah, good point.
In the show, the first time we see the Citadel is the same time that the Septon of Baelor blows up. So it doesn't bode well for it.
That's a good connection.
Wow.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's crazy. So how about your number 2, Rachel? Lady Rachel.
Okay, so my number 2 is actually the very first opening scene when they're showing I call them chess pieces, but they're not really chess pieces, but they're the pieces that go on the war maps.
Right.
And I noticed that the first 2 pieces shown are the lions for Lannister and the wolf for Stark, and I thought that was... This is kind of like a foreshadowing thing. And then they pan away, and behind the wolf pieces are the twin towers and the Bolton sigil between the twin towers. And then the next shot of the board is the wolves surrounded by the lions.
No way.
And
yeah,
I loved that. Just the show does such a great job with like wordless visuals, like when they melt ice, that whole first opening of that
2
episode
swords.
when they melt ice.
Season 4, episode 2, is it?
Yeah, so I mean it's just the little hidden meanings in the show. Like I wasn't even really quite paying attention. I mean, I was literally just sitting down on the couch, and I just happened to look up. I mean, I know you know this, Duncan. I've watched the series like 30 times.
Right.
And so, I mean, when I do this rewatch for the podcast, like I do take notes and I do try to look at it with a new lens. But I mean, like I've seen this episode like 30 times. So, but I sat down and I looked at it and I'm like, holy shit. Wait, the wolf is totally surrounded by the lion. So I rewound it and watched. Yeah, I watched the first part of it again, and I just thought that was super telling, a great foreshadow of the end of the episode.
Yeah, these guys are real smart with that type of stuff.
Yeah,
show us, don't tell us type things.
It's so great, and tying into that same scene, I loved. And I know Duncan, with my Ravens calls and what we talked about on the episode that I guest hosted with you, is like a mother's strength and a mother's intuition. And I loved how Rob went to his mom for advice. It's like we're always so defiant against our moms. We've all done it. We know more than our mom, but then all of a sudden, like, we need mom and we need her advice. And
he pointed out too how when he like didn't listen to her, everything went bad.
Yeah, and I love that humility and that like being a little bit humble and saying like,
Very
look,
kingly.
man,
screwed you. I didn't listen to your advice, but okay, so I'm not like a psychotic feminist, but I am a woman, so I'm just gonna go with it and say that George R.R. Martin has created a world And I love it because the women in this show are treated horribly, terribly. I think even the men out there can agree with me that the women are treated like utter shit on this show.
Hard to argue against that. I mean, in a lot of cases, for sure.
But what is underlying with the whole story is it's the women that are surviving, and it's the women that keep the men strong. And I love that gentle nod by George's writing that, you know, because he gets a lot of criticism for the way he treats women in his series. And I can agree to that. But what maybe people aren't reading kind of between the lines is he's really giving us women a coup that we're kind of the ones that keep it all together. And so I just, this first scene kind of shows that, like, a king, a male king who everybody's looking up to is going to his mom for advice. And I just loved that subtle dynamic. And it happens multiple times in the show where mother's strengths are highlighted, women's strengths are highlighted. And
it's a stark contrast between Robb and Joffrey as well, because Joffrey is sort of the opposite with his mom, and he's the psycho, you know, so they're telling us that the good guys, you know, like their moms.
Completely. He's crazy. I mean, I hate Joffrey, but I mean, like, the women in the show,
one true king,
they are treated terribly, but they rise to unbelievable strengths, like Sansa, Dany. I mean, I can go on and on about the powerful women in this show. And I mean, you fast forward now to season 7, and like, Cersei's the queen. Dany she has 2 dragons now.
Brienne's got Valyrian steel.
Yeah, Brienne has Valyrian steel. Arya is like the best assassin you could ever have on your side. Sansa is Lady of Winterfell. And so the tables are kind of turning. So I feel like this maybe is
even
kind of
Cersei's queen as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just a great nod and a great coup to George R.R. Martin's writing, where, you know, the women are treated horribly, but he gives us women total nods throughout his writing and throughout this series that, you know, the women keep it together in this show. They tend to be the ones that survive. And sadly, Kat does not survive this episode, but I found it very telling to George's, maybe his inner monologue with himself about women, that you have a king, a noble, honorable man turning to his mom for advice. Yeah. So that's my number 2.
You know, this just occurred to me as you're talking about this, because like, last episode, Stannis gets, like, his instincts, his guts are telling him there's something is off, like, there's just something isn't right, and so he immediately goes to, like, consult with his Jiminy Cricket Davos. And I feel like in this scene too, I feel like it's like Robb. I think it's like he senses, like, his instincts are telling him, like, this isn't right, like, this isn't, like, it shouldn't work. And I noticed this too with the opening with the chess pieces. Like, you can really just see, like, okay, yeah, if the Boltons and the Freys are actually on the Stark side, then they've got Casterly Rock pinned. But if not, they are just in, like, the middle of just
surrounded.
Like, yeah, and I think, like, if anybody, like, if you're, you know, if you're not thinking, if you're actually thinking, like, you know, more, like, rationally, you know, you should know Walder Frey isn't gonna, he's a coward. Like, you know what kind of person he is. He doesn't really care about, like, the traditions or the sacred oaths or anything. He just, what he can get away with. And, like, you know, he's also just a coward. And when you really look at that map, like, they made those chess pieces huge to kind of, it really helps emphasize just how many Lannister lions are on the east side. And like you really think Walder Frey is just gonna be, like, in the middle of that pincher and, like, be the vanguard when the lions come after them?
Yeah,
like
the late Walder Frey.
Yeah.
Well, and even in that scene, Kat goes, if Walder Frey cooperates. And it's like, they kind of know that he's a total wild card in the situation. He's the swing vote, basically. We're either going to die or we're going to go defeat Castle Rock. And it all depends on slimy, disgusting Walder Frey.
And it's kind of like that whole that illusion, a mummer's trick kind of thing about power, where like, there's just this perception of the Lions, the Lannisters, as just like powerful, and the sellsword is gonna side with whoever has
the
most power. Yeah, or
they got the gold mines, man.
Well,
yeah,
they've got the illusions. They got the illusion of
exactly
the gold mines.
Yeah.
Yes, right. That was my number 2.
Right. Awesome.
Nice. So who's up? Yeah, Patrick. How about you, Sir Patrick of the Hindsight?
Oh man, I think for my number 2, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna just go all out here. There's okay, so like Walder was saying about Talissa, how when you take off those clothing, everything stays right in place, doesn't move an inch. But if she's actually Rhaegar as a faceless man in disguise as a woman, then once you take off the face magic glamour, then nothing stays in place. And
I have no idea what the hell you just said.
Oh, no.
I'm not the only one.
This is something I'm kicking around ever since I noticed that she mentioned that she likes to play the harp and recite Valyrian poetry, which are just
two characteristics of Rhaegar. So you're saying Rhaegar could have faked his death or been a faceless man, or left after everybody thought he died, became a faceless man. Now he's back as Talissa.
Okay, so because I've reconciled this, because I'm pretty married to the idea that he's Jaqen H'ghar, but okay, so I think he was first Jaqen H'ghar, and in the show universe where Talissa exists, because she's, spoilers, not in the books. He then goes up and becomes Talissa. I don't know, but I'm not like fully committed to this, but I just find it too like amusing.
Not to mention, fuck yeah.
There's so many things that I will start off just speculating upon as like kind of a joke about like just tinfoil theories, but then like they just keep bearing fruit. And like Rhaegar, there's apparently in the Iliad, like there's the whole there's this thing that's like post Homer, like it's not in Homer's Iliad or Odyssey, but added to it by later people writing about it throughout antiquity and classical times
about the Trojan War.
Yeah, where Achilles hides out among all these women disguised as a woman, and most playwrights like call for him to be played by a woman like on stage, and there's all these different versions of it, but it's this like sort of this classical fad for like exploring like this like
where
gender
the
fluidity.
Badass warrior is disguised as a woman, and that would totally fit for the Rhaegar like hiding as a Talissa theory.
I just want to throw out there, all I heard from your theory was that you think that Jon's dad is sleeping with his brother. So
I heard that Talissa is Milan.
Is Milan? Oh, Mulan. I gotcha. I want that sauce, that Mulan sauce, Morty. All right, so my number 2 is Daario. Just in general, he's proving himself to be quite the badass over there. In Yunkai. And so he has the cool idea, like I mentioned earlier, to sneak in and open the gates from within, like a sort of Trojan horse type thing. I mean, obviously it wasn't a gift how they got in, but he infiltrates, unseen, and opens the gates from inside, which is really cool. And he totally calls out Jorah on his bullshit,
Yeah.
So Jorah's like thinking about all these ways Daario could be lying to them and manipulating them and getting them set up to be killed. And Daario's just like, you have a very suspicious mind. In my experience, only dishonest people think this way. And I was just like, dude, he totally called it. Yeah.
Which at this point, I mean, he's still snitching on Dany, right? I mean, he hasn't been discovered as by Barristan.
He hasn't been called out on it. I think it has stopped. I think maybe the last time was Qarth or something.
Quath?
I just said Qarth. At this point, I don't think he's still spying on her actively, but I think that it was a thing. And if he was going to be like Barristan, he says to Barristan, if we're loyal to the queen, if we're truly her loyal servants, we'll do whatever needs to be done, no matter the cost, no matter our pride. But it's sad because at this point, his sin still lurks beneath the surface, and the smartest thing he could have done was to say, fuck my pride, and take a hit on it and confess and tell her, because when it comes out, by somebody else telling her, it just makes him look even more guilty, and it's bad news,
Yeah, I think she would have been like seriously pissed if he told her, but once the fire, kind of died down in her heart, she would appreciate his honesty and but at the same time, I doubt she would have trusted him the way she continues to do up until that point, and it may not have advanced herself as far as she became, because Jorah was a huge catalyst.
That, right?
Yeah, he was a huge catalyst in her confidence in becoming who she was,
and made different decisions that may not have.
Yeah, and maybe also lost faith in herself a little bit.
Yeah,
and maybe it slowed her progression to where she is now at the end of season 7.
Right, it can make her second-guess everything.
In Qarth, she's sort of like, I think it's after she loses her dragons, and she's sort of freaking out, and she's just kind of like, I can't trust anybody.
Where are my dragons?
Yeah, and like she's just like, Jorah, it's like, oh, what would I do without you? You're the only person I could trust. And look on his face. And he's just kind of like, he had this opportunity to like come clean there, but that would have been totally the wrong time, because right then she needed him to be like, he was her rock at that point.
Yeah,
and so
maybe that made him think like, oh, I just can't tell her, because if she loses what she thinks is her rock, then she's just could be totally adrift,
Yeah,
maybe it was
which very well could have happened
decision.
Because I mean, back in Qarth, she reminded me. Not as like annoying as Sansa, but still like very childish. Like when she's screaming, like, "Where are my dragons?" Like she's like wigging out like a little kid, and not.
And the knights and the songs,
like,
and she's like, they're sewing dragon banners in secret, like just like Sansa believes in.
She's
pouting,
and she's. I mean, like I get it. She's wigging out because her children are missing, and I understand. I mean, being a mom, like I could only imagine if my son like disappeared, I'd probably be like freaking out. But she was so. Immature in her growth, as her storyline has progressed. She was so immature at that point that if he would have told her back then, I think it would have broken her, probably to the point where she may not have come full circle to where she is now.
That's interesting.
Or she would have killed him.
Oh yeah, that's.
Oh really? I don't know. See, like now, even in like this. Where we are in the rewatch now, yes, but back in Qarth, I'm not sure. I think she was still unsure of her own confidence and her own abilities.
Yeah, I was speaking of like now, because now she's got Barristan Selmy where he can chip on the side of, did you see what he just said? I mean, in that scene, like you just brought up, Duncan, Daario does this quip, just like bam, right at him. And he doesn't do anything back because it's guilt.
Like,
I mean, he's always full of wisdom, and he doesn't do anything. It's just like, what do you think, Grey? They just turn to Grey Worm, and he says he trusts him.
Oh man,
right, exactly.
Something I noticed about this scene is when Daario says, and I will need your two best men, and right there, Jorah like looks over at Grey Worm, and then when he says his thing, he's like, "So you would, and so possibly you're just leading me and Grey Worm into a trap,
Right?"
And then this whole time, it's like, dude, Barristan the Bold is right next to you, and like it's like his first thought, like he as soon as he said your two best men, it's like, well, that's obviously me and Grey Worm, but you're with Batman. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, and like there's this. It's kind of cute how like Barristan's just like, "Oh, can I come too?" And he's like, "No, you gotta stay here and look after the queen. Like that's your duty."
Yeah.
Like, "Oh, come on, this is my thing. I'm Batman."
I'm Batman. I infiltrate in stealth and emerge successfully. That is his thing. Literally.
It's totally Barristan's thing. Yeah, and I think that like there's this sort of like unspoken rivalry with Barristan and Jorah. Like it's kind of adorable, but it's kind of like
trying to one up each other like every way, like two brothers or something.
Yeah, so it's kind of like when Barristan finds out about Jorah, he's an honorable man and all that, and he goes by the book and everything, but he sort of it's still like
he weighs the decision whether or not to like mention it to see if he's loyal or something. You think
it's like it's sort of like he's going by the book, but everybody kind of goes by the book according to like what suits them in a way,
right.
Almost in the other quick little tiny bit of tinfoil, if I could just be indulged.
I'm going to start tallying how many times Sir Patrick says tinfoil.
Dude, you know what I mean? Tell you how many times I've restrained myself from just launching into a heap of it. But like, just okay, the fact that they're asking Grey Worm, like, what does he think, and that he's making decisions, indicates that he has autonomy, which is something that is completely bred out of the Unsullied.
Right.
But she didn't just take all of the Unsullied, she also took the ones that are in training. And long story short, I think he still has his junk. Because I think
Grey Worm?
Yeah. Because they chose him to be their leader because he hadn't been completely, like, indoctrinated yet. So he still had a level of autonomy so that he could make decisions in battle, which is the one thing that the Unsullied can't do, is that if they don't have somebody to tell them what to do, they'll just stand there and get cut down or whatever.
So they could be like specific leaders that aren't cut potentially. I don't think that the untrained were part of that group though. There was 8,000 of those Unsullied that were for sale, and then there was like 2,000 others or something that were only partially trained, but we never saw them at least there. So Grey Worm was not one of the untrained ones.
Well, we don't know that though. We make assumptions. We assume that they're going to choose their best guy.
Because when they brought Grey Worm forward, it was after they had coalesced the entire army, right? So I guess it could have been. Yeah, he could have been one of the partially trained. Interesting.
And if you see how big, like how jacked the Unsullied look when you first meet them, like when he brings them out, and then like Grey Worm is not a big dude. Like he's pretty small. Like
part of that could be from the lack of testosterone though after being cut. But I think we have like a pretty good. It's been pretty definitively shown that he's been cut one way or the other on the show, right?
Do you think though that the Unsullied would have chosen Grey Worm as their leader if he was just like one of the half-trained guys? Like, don't you think? Because Dany had them, the Unsullied, choose a leader.
Right.
Exactly.
She didn't choose a leader. So like, why would they choose?
So maybe he's not even really an
boy.
Unsullied.
Because he hasn't been completely turned into a robot
like brainwashed.
Yet. So he has the ability to make decisions and be decisive, whereas once you're completely indoctrinated into the Unsullied, you
don't even have those thoughts. Yeah. Okay, I follow.
You're an automaton.
It's a good theory. It's a good theory, but I think that like part of the whole like Missandei Grey Worm love thing that happened in the last season was the fact that they like figured out how to make it work, even though he didn't like have something, like
that's what they've, telecast to us to like make it look that way, but things aren't always what they seem. And when
maybe he has his pillar and just not the stem, or wait, or the stones.
I mean, when he's watching her while he's in the water and he's like sinks underwater, he is like, that's the look of a guy that's like trying to hide.
He's hiding something underwater.
Yeah, he's trying to keep his log submerged. But when Danny asks Missandei what happened, and she says many things, and she's like, many things. Ooh. Anyway, it's just a little bit of tinfoil, but I find that it adds to the story for me to think of it that way. So
I love it, Pat.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So in that same scene, Duncan, I noticed like when Grey Worm and Jorah and Fabio Naharis were all fighting the soldiers. I thought it was really cool how you could tell like Grey Worm's fighting style was so precise, and like you could just tell it was
honed,
just honed it, like just beat into his body. And Daario was so like fluid and smooth, and then you had Jorah, which was like the traditional Westerosi knight, like
hack and slash,
the hack and slash. And I just love that very quick, again like a quick visual with no words, no dialogue of the differences in Dany's army and like all the people that she's kind of brought together to support her claim to the throne.
Like those coexist bumper stickers. That's interesting. So anybody else got anything to add to the Daario stuff?
I like how he does his like Mad Mardigan type thing where he's like, oh yeah, we got this in the bag, and then like the shit hits the fan. He's like, "Whoops, underestimated it," but then he still like comes out alive because he's just like he's a badass and a hero. But yeah, I noticed there's this pattern of Daario like underestimating the odds.
That's funny.
Yeah.
There's a couple instances in this episode where like they're totally surrounded with that Daario scene, right? And then there's the other part with Tormund Giantsbane where he says to kill the guy, and Jon says, "No, let him get away. Just take the horses. They'll send a couple guys for a horse thief, but they'll send more guys for murderers, right?" And Tormund's like, "So let them send them all. That's how we kill crows. Not when they're hiding in their castles, but when they're out in the fields. That's what we do." And it made me think of this quote by Marine Corps General Chesty Puller, and it's something like somebody says, "Sir, we're surrounded." And it's like, "Excellent, and we can attack in any direction."
That's awesome. Wow.
I don't know. It popped up in my head a couple times this episode. I thought that was pretty good. But yeah, that wraps up my number 2. How about your numero uno, Johnny? Or you got something else to say?
No, yeah, I got a couple final thoughts on Daario. Like,
sure.
I feel like I may be the only one in the boat of liking him because I've never been able to get into the recast of Daario. Like,
yeah, I like.
I know
Fabio
most people are the opposite. I talk to. It's like, he just looks like an accountant with a scruffy beard. He just doesn't strike me as...
He's not Daario Naharis.
The line that Daario delivers in this, like, a man can't make love to his property. I just feel like the new one could... I just can't see him delivering that same damn line with the look.
Right. Yeah, that's the other thing I wanted to mention.
The city is yours, my queen.
Right.
I agree with you, Johnny. I mean, don't get me wrong. The new Daario Naharis is super hot, but I know from just book spoilers that I've come across, like the Daario Naharis in the books is supposed to have like a
purple hair,
beard,
forked beard,
like the general,
like kind of funky looking. And I feel like, and I'm not to that point in the story in the novels, but if I'm to go off the little that I have found out on the internet about Daario Naharis in the novel, is the first Daario fits his character a little bit better because he's supposed to be quirky.
Yeah, I agree.
And not like your traditional like handsome. And I mean, the Daario in this episode is, I mean, he's not ugly, but I mean, he's not your traditional handsome, and he's quirky. And I was actually surprised that they recast him based off what I know about the novel.
I was confused. I mean, I've never binged the show except for the first season. So it wasn't like I watched it all at once. Like, hey, what happened to that one guy? What's his name? So when I was ready for that Daario scene to come back, and we meet him again, and he's this new actor that's just so, again, like this traditional good-looking guy that just kind of disappears in the background because he looks like every dark-haired, good-looking guy. Where this other guy was quirky and like Fabio looking, like he was just. He seemed like like a loud character, and
he's
his
got like
teeth,
a swagger to him.
And he had funky teeth, and
exactly.
I mean, like, and the
way
way
like
he
an
talked,
Essos guy.
yeah, the way he talked was a little bit mysterious, and I mean, I like the new Daario. I think if they would have went with him from the beginning,
it wouldn't have been such a shocker.
It wouldn't have been a big deal.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
I actually liked this Daario better for the character of what he was supposed to be in the novels.
I just wanted to see this goofy guy go from someone handing some severed heads to this what he becomes in the well, I mean, no book spoilers, but you know, I just wanted to see him become more like evolved with Dany's vision and influence, because where we're at right now, he's rough around the edges. He's rough around the edges. He's not plugged into how everything works yet, or plugged into Daenerys yet. But once we get there, I was hoping we get to see this guy mature and evolve with that, like with all these different things that we're gonna have to see her face still in Essos. And when this other guy came in, it was like, casting guys were like, no, this dude here will fit where this Daario is going, and he does. I'm not knocking that on the new one. I just really wanted to see this actor get a chance to evolve with this character like he does in the books, and I guess that's just where I was at. Rewatching it because I've not done an actual rewatch except for when you started doing the rewatch, Duncan. So there was like years between when I originally saw like this episode and now. And when I was rewatching it, I was just like, why the hell did we get rid of this guy? What the heck?
I totally agree. And coming from someone who's watched, so I know I've told Duncan this, but when my son was super little and he was waking up like every 2 hours as a newborn, I would put on Game of Thrones on my laptop in his nursery. So I watched the show like over and over and over again. And I still to this day agree with you. I don't dislike new Daario, but I liked this Daario better for the role of Daario.
Yeah, he's more.
It just felt like a soap opera recasting to me. Like, oh, today's episode's being played by.
Just like throw a totally different guy in there.
I felt like the show was giving into like peer pressure. Like they were giving into peer pressure, like, oh, mainstream women aren't going to find this guy like attractive because he's not your typical hunk. Well, and I kind of disagree with that. I find him attractive in a quirky way.
I actually heard something that I have yet to confirm for sure, but I've heard from a pretty reliable source that GoM said Dany has a type, and it's facial hair, it's dark hair, and it's basically it's.
Oh, got you.
Yeah,
yeah.
She likes tall guys, but.
Yeah, that makes sense, because with that Daario, you wouldn't have that like transition of going from Drogo to Jon Snow.
To
so
Blondie.
By recasting him, it makes it flow. I get that. That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And
I still like the other guy.
Speaking speaking to the point about wanting to see this character mature. I mean, I haven't met him in the book, so I don't know like if he's got like this whole like growth arc or whatever, but. It seems like in the show, when she decides to leave him behind, it's sort of like a sign, like a rite of passage almost, where she's grown beyond him, and he's sort of stuck.
Right.
He'll always.
He is what
be...
he is. He's a sellsword. Like he's a wild guy.
But
like
bringing it back there though. I mean, the current Daario saying, "Don't leave, I love you." If he was to like get down on his knees and beg. It would seem completely in character. This guy here, it would seem like he would just like, come here for a second. Let me whisper in your ear and you'll stay here with me or take me with you.
Yeah.
He's got that charm that the new one just doesn't have, like that swagger.
Got a quirky swag. Yeah, it's a swag.
Yep.
And he seems kind of dangerous. Like he's got that like
Mysterious.
We can blame Jason Statham for his for his leap in the series because Jason
Fabio.
Statham left the Transporter movies, and then this guy left Game of Thrones to go do the Transporter movies. So damn you, Jason!
Oh, that's right.
Statham.
That's right.
He was also this guy was the bad guy, Francis, I think, in Deadpool.
Was he really?
Oh, yeah, he was.
Yeah,
that's
just
right.
With short hair.
Oh
Yep.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
right.
Francis, that's right.
Francis.
Francis.
Look, I've got like just like two more things about Daario, and then I'll shut up. Never mind, I forgot. Okay. So last episode, I noticed for the first time these odd parallels between Daario and Jaqen. I'm not going to go into this thing where I think he's a faceless man, but I just think there's this, the symmetry or the rhyme of it, where when like Arya meets Jaqen or Dany meets Daario, they're both with these uncouth, like crass guys who are constantly making like jokes about sexual assault.
Parallels, yeah. The groups of three. One guy who connects with him, the other two are like assholes that are accompanying him.
Yeah, and the one guy just kind of like, he's got this look in his eye where he's like, it seems like he's more civilized, yet somehow creepier. Like, seems like dangerous, and like he's like listening, he's polite, and then
he's really focused and smart.
Yeah, and then I just kind of, it's interesting because I know this couldn't have been like planned, or could it? But then he changes faces on us all of a sudden. Like, whoa!
There's a good theory that Euron Greyjoy is Daario Naharis as well. I think that like the timelines in the books or something kind of like line up where neither of them are anywhere near the same place at the same time, type of thing. I don't know. I can't remember exactly.
Whoa!
But he's like,
that's crazy.
That'd be kind of cool.
My last thing, just when Jorah comes back from that whole thing, and Dany gets this look on her face and says, "And what about Daario Naharis?" And then Jorah looks like his heart is just sunk, and
I made that note.
Yeah,
it looks like it's kind of like a fake out because it looks like he's about to tell her the heartbreaking truth that he died. But his face just sunk and he was crushed because he
cares more about him.
He sees that look in her eyes.
He loves her, but she sees he's old.
Old eyes.
Yeah. But it's also kind of like, I don't know, he sees the same look in her eyes about Jon and he's more on board with it because it kind of shows like he approves of her getting with like a guy who's like,
of that
if
caliber.
You're gonna get with a younger guy, get with a guy who's not a shithead. Like,
totally.
I mean, he's from the north too. I mean, he's from Bear Island, and he knows the Starks, and he knows that, technically from Jorah's perspective, even though we know differently, that he's Ned Stark's bastard son. That he's an honorable man versus Daario, who's essentially he's a sellsword. He sells his sword.
And he lives for two purposes, and it's to make love to a woman who wants to make love to him, and to kill men who want to kill him. And it doesn't really get much deeper than that. He doesn't really have much of a higher value than that.
Definitely not at this point, but I think the Daario Naharis that Dany leaves behind to go to Westeros does love her. Because he's like, I don't care. I don't care if I'm your, I don't know what the male term for mistress is, but that's essentially what it is. I don't care. I just want to be with you. What comes after you? And I truly believe that he loves her at that point, but I totally agree with you. In this moment, he's for exactly what you said, those two purposes.
Yeah, he doesn't
to kill people who want to kill him
yet.
and to have sex with people who want to have sex with him.
Right.
Do you think Daario's going to be with Cersei next season?
Daario? Oh my god, that'd be hilarious.
Okay, so
Like he comes over with the Golden Company.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my god, that would be
So I have a
nuts.
question about that, because in season 7, when Dany is talking to Tyrion at Dragonstone by the fire, and she's talking about courage, she's listing off all these people that were courageous that had died, and she lists Daario in that list. And I can't figure out if he died and
Well,
she's
no.
like referencing that, or if she's just referencing that he was courageous.
She's talking about brave men and how like brave heroic men do stupid things and then they die. And, well, I mean,
I know, but all the other men that she listed were dead, except Daario.
Yeah, he's
So-
not dead, so it must have just been referencing
Okay.
his,
He's dead.
his
Okay,
reckless
'cause I was like,
behavior in
wait,
general
what
or
the
something.
hell?
Yeah,
The last
I mean,
we saw
it's
him, he was
only a
totally
matter
alive.
of time.
I mean, he kind of acts like a
yeah,
guy
that's
who
probably
knows.
what she thinks too. It's just a matter of
Like-
time. 'Cause
And,
it's
you know-
reckless.
Okay. I thought I was like missing something. Like, did he die in the books? Is he still alive? Like, where am I? It was just a weird reference because every other guy she lists on that list is dead.
Oh, yeah,
That's
we're not
a
going to
good
tell you if he
catch,
lives in the
though.
books.
I think it's kind of like it's kind of like how she sees him, like in that way that she's kind of grown past him, like where it's like, well, it's only a matter of time, and he just wants to kill as many dudes as possible and ride the dragon as many times as possible before he dies, And
Definitely.
being raised a gladiator, that's like all he's really known is just like the glory of battle and women until it's your time,
He's an
And,
adrenaline junkie for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Got it. Okay, because I thought I was like totally missing something because I rewound it. I was like, she totally just said Daario, and all the other guys she listed are dead. Like, am I supposed to read further into that? I guess is what my mind was.
Yeah, I doubt it. She's just
Going,
got
yeah.
Daario on the brain.
Well, who wouldn't?
She's like, oh wait, no. She's just like, oh, is he still alive? Oh, whatever, He did
Got
crazy
it. Okay, cool.
Maybe she was talking about Fabio.
Oh,
Since we got a new
Oh
one.
yeah, because he's dead. That Daario's dead.
Yeah.
All right, Johnny, your number one.
My number one is the Hound saving Arya.
All right.
All right. So now again, did any of you guys watch this like when it aired? Am I
Yeah.
the only one?
I did.
Okay.
No, I hadn't
Okay.
caught up at this point.
Okay, so when it aired live, there was like this 6 or 5 day window, and I don't know if this happened for you, man, but I went back to work, and a lot of people, and it became an internet rumor too, were under the impression that the Hound killed Arya because some people had already died. And you gotta realize, I mean, he hits her pretty damn hard and knocks her out, and that's
true.
You don't get, he doesn't deliver any dialogue like "I'm gonna save you, girl," or he just like
He said,
I mean,
"It's
he just.
over."
It's over.
It's over.
Yeah.
It just bam hits her. So there was like this stigma for all of only 4 or 5 days before it was dispelled by the end of the season.
That's great.
But oh my God, we lost Arya, we lost Catelyn, we lost
All in the same
like, we
episode.
lost everybody but Sansa.
I think that's intentional because he ends a chapter like that in the books too, right?
Yeah.
So then you're left
Yep.
wondering if she's dead.
Yep.
It's great.
So the internet was running around, basically, but I didn't catch that vibe like that. Like, so I was defending it for like 4 or 5 days. Like, no, man. I mean, right there, she walks up to him earlier in the episode and says, someday I'm going to put a sword through your eye and out
Right
the
to the
back of
back.
your
Yeah.
skull.
Back of your skull.
At that point, you're
Stick
the
a needle in
Hound.
your eye.
Reach up if you had the plans to, to
Riverlands.
just knock her out, carry over there. Oh, look, the Boltons are taking over this thing with the Freys. Oh, here, check this out. It's passed out and ready for y'all guys. I mean, I never got that rumor, but it got huge in just a small amount of time. So
That's
I thought
so
I'd bring
funny.
that back up
There
on the show.
was-
That's like 5 years later, but
Hilarious. I didn't know about that.
When I watched it live, there was kind of like what you're saying. There was that whole like, is she alive? Is she dead? There was a few people that were thinking that maybe he was going to, since the whole red wedding was happening and in the process, that maybe he was going to turn her over to
redeem himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Turn her over there, or it was just I do remember with what you're saying, there was a little bit of speculation as to what was actually happening.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably, I mean, she sits there and again, we don't want to go into any book spoilers, but like, it's not a huge spoiler, but in the book, the dire wolf's not in a cage.
That was one of my main notes.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah.
It was kind of leading into my number one.
so you see Arya, well, that's as far as I'll go with it. So you see Arya's, see its, face there at the bottom of the door is what we see in the TV show. And all this sadness just sets in, and I always just saw it as like this, what it's supposed to be, a symbolic rescue. I mean, here's this monster, saving this little girl in this horrible ass environment and getting her out of there.
Right.
And I mean, even though again it doesn't cut to any dialogue confirming that, or doesn't show him walking across the bridge with her later, I always assumed that, and I just love how it builds upon what we're gonna get over season 4 with them. Right. So it's it's definitely my number one. I mean, and that's in an episode with Ygritte, so that's pretty good for me.
While we're chatting about it, I mean, we can just mention the Grey Wind note that I wrote down.
Okay.
Yeah, just adding on to what you're talking about, the whole scene with Grey Wind and how the Freys just walked up and just kind of shot him in the cage.
Weak.
I felt that scene was, like, I think that they were, the showrunners were trying to symbolize pretty much what happened to Robb. He was locked up in the
chamber,
Yeah, he was locked up in the chamber and shooting.
Guys with crossbows at a downward angle.
Yeah, and just, like, instant killed, pretty much. But I must say, that scene, I mean, the symbology there is amazing, like that the showrunners would add such small details there. However, that scene, I hated that scene.
I can't even watch it.
It's so hard, and not because Grey Wind dies, but because the book scene is way better.
Good. It's really good.
It's so cool. Like, I mean, Arya, it's Arya, right? Who does it? I think so.
I think it's Arya.
She lets him out, and he just starts tearing Freys left and right.
Oh,
yeah, he goes down with the fight.
Yeah, I mean, so he still dies, but
he didn't just get put down like he does in the show.
Yeah,
right.
No, it's like
right. Yeah, that was one of the things that the show was criticized for, trapping him there. I think.
Well, sounds like a budgetary concern.
Yeah, definitely saving money.
Mm-hmm. But it was also a symbology thing,
I think Travis nailed it. I think it's to symbolize Robb. And, like, Robb kind of died very slowly. Like, he was shot a few times, and then he was stabbed by Roose Bolton, and he said, "Mom," and fell to the ground. And, the same thing kind of happened to Grey Wind. And honestly, I haven't been able to watch that scene since the first time I watched that scene, but I still remember it vividly. Like, they point the arrows down, they shoot him, and then under the door, his eyes are still open, and then they kind of close.
Arya watches him close. Yeah, that's really
sad. And I still can't watch that scene. And actually, what's so funny is my husband had to convince me to watch Game of Thrones with him. I was like opposed. I was completely opposed to this show. I was like, not for me. It's mythical. I don't really give a fuck about this type of show. And when Lady died, I looked at him. I was like, I am done. I'm not watching this show anymore.
That was rough.
And here I am podcasting about the show. So obviously my tune has changed, but
this is the next direwolf death after Lady too,
Grey Wind. Grey Wind was worse for me because that the eye closing. I've never been able to watch that again. I just look away. I pretend like I'm not watching, or I fast forward.
After the episode, I just went outside and hugged my baby.
Oh, your Wind is so beautiful, by the way.
Thanks.
So gorgeous.
Yeah,
what's he, 95% wolf?
Maybe they'd be. Yeah, he's like 80, 85, somewhere around there.
Travis, I went to Oregon State. So I lived in Corvallis for 7 years, and I worked at a little pet supply store called Animal Crackers. And there was a lady that would always bring her wolf dog into the store. This wolf that she would bring in, he was like 90% wolf, and you could completely tell. And he was like Yeah, he was like 120 pounds. He was huge.
Yeah. I started off with low content wolf dogs, and then I worked my way up to Grey Wind, which is like a real, like a
He's pretty much
upper
a
mid
wolf.
high.
Yeah.
When I first got my first low content, I thought that Ghost was a high content, and now that I've done more research and I actually own a real high content, it's like, whoa, Ghost is like low content.
Because she would bring him into the store and like she would instruct us on like basically how to behave around her wolf, because she wouldn't even call it a dog. He was a wolf, and you looked at his eyes and you were like looking into the most primal being you've ever seen in your life.
It's hardcore.
In a retail store.
Right.
Cool, man.
It's like kind of overpowering.
Back to Grey Wind. Have you guys heard this whole theory about how each wolf's name kind of predicts the personality and the fate of the Stark that names them?
I've read about that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so Grey Wind. I was mulling this over to kind of realize that GoM likes to throw in all of these classic rock references and like allusions and shoutouts and things in his stuff. Like
Heartsbane.
Dust in the Wind by Kansas, that song about how everything is just gonna turn
So great.
Yeah. So great. Yeah. But yeah, Dust in the Wind, Grey Wind. If you guys know that song, it's a really depressing, sad song.
Yeah.
Everything is completely futile, and in the end, we all just die. And
just like Rob. That's funny.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned that on a previous Duncan didn't. Maybe it was like a Still Smug book talk or something a while ago that we did, where we covered the wolf names and how Shaggy Dog represents the wild side of like Recon.
Man, okay, I was yelling at you while I was listening to that because I was like, wait, it's also a Shaggy Dog story is a literary. It's a thing. It's like a long drawn out story that doesn't go anywhere. It's all about the telling of the story, but in the end, it's just like wah wah, and then it doesn't really, expecting some like great like finish, and then it's just like, and then he died. The end.
And then summer dies, and then that symbols summer ending.
Right, the end of summer.
But does it also mean that Bran will bring about summer?
Oh yeah, I don't know.
Did you finish your number one, Johnny?
I did.
All right, Rachel, how about your number one?
Okay, so my general number one, sadly, was like the entire Red Wedding scene. And I know that's like really broad, and I figured it was probably a few of yours number ones as well. So I wanted to focus just again on like kind of the motherly nature that kind of it always pops up in this show for me. And maybe it was because when I first started watching Game of Thrones, my husband and I were talking about having a baby, and then I was pregnant while watching the show, and then I had the baby while watching the show, and then I watched the show like a crackhead when I had my baby. So I maybe just picked up on it more from a mother's intuition, but so I'll kind of narrow down my number one from the overall theme of the Red Wedding to when Talisa got stabbed. And I know that's a terrible number one because it's not really a favorite, clearly, but
that's the first piece of action that like really sets like I
enjoyed the shit out of that scene.
Yeah, that's for like ultimate shock effect.
Total shock value. And I think for me, when I watched it was just so horrifying because the Frey guy, I don't even know his name, the Frey guy, he went straight for her stomach.
The baby, yeah.
Yeah.
I bet people threw up watching that, honestly.
Yeah, it wasn't like
he had to be instructed for that, though.
Yeah, it's like he didn't slit her throat. He didn't stab her in the heart. He like stabbed her like 10 times in the stomach.
And then didn't even do anything to put her out of the misery. Just let her to sit there and like revel, or not, opposite revel, like just, be crushed in the weight of what just happened.
Well, in her face, like, she played it so well. I don't know the actress's name that plays her, but, like, she immediately, like, clearly grabs her stomach, but the look on her face wasn't, like, pain for herself, but it was, like, pain for her baby. And, fast forwarding through the Red Wedding, like, she's laying on the floor, like, bleeding out, because being stabbed in the stomach is probably one of the worst ways to die, because it's very slow and it's extremely painful. And you can just see her, she's, like, rubbing her stomach.
The rest of her is let go, but the one thing that's still holding on is her hand on her stomach.
Yeah, and I just felt like
heartbreaking.
It's really heartbreaking, especially when I first watched it, like, and watched it as a mom, the bond you have with your unborn child is kind of a weird one, because you don't know your child, you don't have, like, an image of them, you don't have their personality, you don't have the way they sound, but you have a protective instinct around you.
Right.
Like, you're constantly thinking about ways to protect yourself, to protect your baby. And so it was just a really heartbreaking moment for me, being a fairly new mom, watching it again. And so she really played it well. Like, it was so tragic, and I just felt like it really kind of encompassed kind of what the Red Wedding was about, was to end the Stark line. Like, not just kill Robb, but kill his offspring, to kill his heir.
Yeah.
And that's really what it was targeted at. It wasn't to kill his wife. It was to kill the baby.
And that's like a real turn to the dark side, too. It's like the end of innocence, you could say, and it's symbolized by that, snuffing out that symbol of pure innocence,
Yeah, exactly. So, it's a terrible number one, but this is a pretty terrible episode. Like, I know there are kind of funny moments and there are other great scenes, but what you're left with is just utter,
horror,
sadness and horror.
Yeah.
And this was the start of that. She was the first victim. The baby was the first victim. It wasn't her.
Victim.
The baby was the victim. And it was just really, I think that's what sent me into the biggest shock. And then everything else was going on, and I was still trying to, like, process, like, he didn't even, like, try to kill her. She suffered for a long time, because that scene went on for, like, 10 minutes, and she was alive the whole time, like, bleeding out.
It's horrifying. It's fucking horrifying.
It was horrible.
Well, even, I'm sorry.
No, I was just
go
going to
ahead,
say
Johnny.
that was kind of like my number one.
Well, even with, like, as much as all these, Walder quotes we did earlier, how goofy and funny he was, the only moment of horror, like, on his face for a moment, or confusion, is right when that happens. Right when he guts the baby, they actually pan over to Walder's reaction, and he's not grinning in that moment. He just looks around like, did anybody else see this?
Oh, my God.
And then it finally starts sinking in, like, once all the other bannermen start getting, shot and stabbed and crossbowed, then he starts kind of grinning. But in that initial shock, even Walder Frey's like, oh, shit.
This
is bad.
They could have ended the Stark's legacy by just, like, slitting her throat, because clearly a fetus is not going to survive without a living mother. But the fact that they symbolically, like, went for the baby and let her suffer and watched her, like, go through that protection mode of, like, I'm going to survive as long as possible to try to, like, salvage, my child's life, is, like, as a mom and as a parent, even now, like, my son will be 2 in July. Even now, it was like, I could barely watch. It was just like, oh my God, I can't, like, I'm seriously sitting here with goosebumps on my arm. Like, I don't even know what I would do in that moment. It was just horrible. So, I mean, sadly,
super
that's
extreme.
my number one. But, you know, it's a terrible number one, but it was the most impactful moment for me of the entire Red Wedding.
One of the most impactful moments of the series, honestly. Just that one moment.
And it ties into just mom grief. I mean, there's a ton of that in that scene. I mean, when right after all that happens and it cuts to Catelyn like, Rob, just go, leave. You know, like my wife was all curled up in tears.
Oh my God. The whole mom vibe.
Yeah, because you can just, I mean, my son's 10 years old, and I just imagine, like, in that moment, like, oh my God, how, you know, even as a father, and then Amy, my wife, we were watching it during the rewatch last week, and we watched it again, I think, the night before last, and both times, like, you just start tearing up, you see all the desperation in eyes, because in that moment, you can do nothing to save your oldest son, your firstborn, and all, it's just,
it's
so
horrible.
Much mom grief in one episode.
Yeah,
one
I
scene.
know, and she, like that cry at the end when she dies, it's like that like the keening cry. It's like beyond control, and it's so like primal. And at I don't know the name of the actress that plays Kat, but she was just incredible. Yep. She was incredible in that moment of just like. And, you know, because Kat doesn't strike you as a character that, like, would kill, period, or kills easily. And she slit that girl's throat, like, fuck all of you. Like,
and that would be me, kind of.
Yeah.
She no longer needed her as leverage, and she didn't have to follow through on the threat, but she did.
And she was completely innocent. I mean, that girl was a complete innocent in that moment, in that time. Like, and Kat felt for her, like, I think it was the episode or two before when Walder, like, smacks her on the butt, and Kat just kind of, like, gives her that look, like, you pitiful child. I'm so sorry. And then, you know, fast forward to this scene, she's like slitting her throat. It's because like the rage she's feeling and the desperation and just the loss, because she doesn't strike me as someone that would kill at all, let alone.
She expresses that feeling you're talking about even further in the books. I'm not going to say exactly how, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Like she does something physically to herself, I will say, that like amps up that moment and shows you just the kind of grief that she's feeling. Oh man.
Yeah. So I mean, it was just like the attack on the children. I'll just dub them all children because Rob, I think even in the novels, he's like what, like 14?
Something like that.
Or like 15. I mean, he's not.
They stooped like to Gregor Clegane levels here. Not only did they violate guest right, but they're killing little babies. You know.
Yeah,
like
they're killing children.
You know.
Shame.
I mean, and I get it. You know, Rob is leading the rebellion. You know, from the north, and while he's a child, he's a king, and he's leading a war. But you know, I guess to narrow down my number one, it's like the mother's strength and a mother's grief, and what the lengths that they're willing to go to save their children. Like Catelyn pleading, like, Rob, just leave, just get out of here, and Walder Frey, well, what makes you think I would let him leave? And I'm like, oh, you fucking asshole.
Just stand up and go.
What makes you think I would let him do that?
Yeah, like, it's horrible. So that's my number one.
Nice.
That's a good one.
Horrible, I know. It's a horrible episode. So
you could put
it's a great episode, but a horrible one. So that's my number one.
Hardcore. How about you, Travis? What's your number one?
My number one, I just really liked the scene in Marine, when they're sneaking in, or no, that's not Marine, is it? That's
Yunkai.
Yunkai, yeah. Sorry, my brain is still in Marine mode because she was there for so damn long.
The Myronese not.
Yeah,
Yunkai is the city they couldn't afford.
Right.
To really show us, yeah.
They're like, we got this awesome new city, however, we can't afford it.
We do not have an awesome new budget.
Yeah, we can't show you it.
I really liked how Karth, like the sets for Karth looked really cheap, but like they were trying to like make it look glamorous,
Super
and
fancy.
but it really kind of symbolized the whole like vibe of that city. To
Oh,
begin with.
yeah,
facade.
false. Yeah.
Yeah, and like Zaro with his whole like,
Yeah.
he's got some gold, but he's nowhere near
Safe
as
looks
rich.
fancy, but guess what? It's empty.
Yeah,
The set looks fancy, but guess what? It was cheap.
Like
Now it's got bodies in it.
yeah, they recycled
true.
that jeweled peacock. Too.
And then at the end of the scene, they pick up the little background image. You get two guys on each end, and they just pick it up and start walking away on set.
They're like Dothraki.
Front screen
It's
projection
just one
style.
big board. But anyways, so my number one was the Grey Worm, Jorah, and Daario 3 versus like all the guards.
Oh yeah, jeez.
I really liked that scene. I really liked how Barristan wanted to go there, but you know he was told that his place is beside the queen. And you know, it just kind of made me think about Barristan's fate in the coming seasons. You know, they're versing all of the Sons of the Harpy when that happens to.
Oh right,
to
it's
Barristan.
him and Grey Worm and like maybe a few other Unsullied, but they get outnumbered.
Yeah, they got outnumbered, and then but in this scene, it was like successful, but you don't really know it was successful. Like the way they filmed it, you know, they kind of played it off as until Jorah shows up, and then they walk around the corner. You're like, oh, okay, good, because the scene just cut, you know, when more of the guards showed up.
Good timing too, because Danny's just like, it's been quite a while and we haven't heard back from them. I'm starting to get a little nervous, and then you know that he walks right around the corner.
Right.
Yeah.
Almost like it was planned. We'll sort of worry a little bit. But yeah, it just, and kind of like how we talked about earlier, you could tell the fighting styles between the three.
Yeah, that was cool.
It's just like a really cool, because the way that these three fighters, they're all together, you know, taking on all these foreign guards. I don't think you really see like that sort of a team up. I think this might have been one of the first times in the show that you see that kind of team up, and it kind of symbolizes Danny like gathering all of these different.
Right. Yeah, like Rachel was saying. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's really cool. I hadn't really thought about that before. Good point.
Kind of like
Yeah.
a video game or something, where you just get like these like three like vastly different. Like you get like a Spartan,
Oh, yeah.
and, like a knight, and
Get like a tank DPS
Talk about For
healer.
Honor.
yeah.
For Honor. Yeah.
Oh man.
But yeah, so I mean that was mine. It's kind of simple.
I liked. We need to point out that Daario saved Jorah's life in this scene. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So Jorah hadn't trusted him. You know, thought maybe he was leading him to a trap or whatever, and Daario has reason to be mad at Jorah for not trusting him, but he proves himself and he proves his worth, you know, in spades
Oh
in this episode.
man, I knew
Irony,
it. That's totally because he's totally Braun's brother, and there's totally parallel with Braun and the Hound.
Oh,
Oh my god.
Boom!
And more
the bear and the hound.
Yeah.
Tinfoil.
Tinfoil. Listen. The reason why Barristan ends up like dying when he fights the Sons of the Harpy is because they're in a confined space, and the other guys are fighting with daggers, and that is the rule. And I've noticed this. If you're in a confined space
With a sword
and you've
or
got a long sword,
or a spear.
you're gonna get Oberoned.
So like gamer
God.
talk,
Gonna
a
get
tank goes against DPS and the tank has no chance other than a lot of life.
Yeah, because he's got no mobility. You know, he's got burst, but he just doesn't have the rapid.
And all the armor, but he doesn't have the rapid ability to like actually kill anything.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
gotta have a maneuverable
What's that
weapon.
Barristan meme? Oh god. Barristan saw me through a bottle of wildfire and killed 50 people. and then it exploded. Just symbolizing how much of a badass he is.
Yeah, he's
awesome.
fucking Batman, dude. He's Batman.
Yeah.
He is totally Batman.
That's great. So where are we? That was Travis's, right?
Yep, that was mine.
So, Sir Patrick, your numero uno, my friend. Oh, wait, didn't you want to mention Reddit theory real quick?
I found this post on Reddit, and I really love it, and I just wanted to share it with everybody. It's from a user named Iron Ead. Iron EAD. So anyway, theory, Robb Stark, the abominable young wolf. If you guys want to see something, an awesome theory that I subscribe to, go to Reddit and type in like theory Robb Stark, the abominable young wolf. It's awesome, but book spoilers.
Okay. That does sound cool. I'll check that out. I haven't heard that either. Oh, right. So what's your number one, Sir Patrick?
I'm gonna go with Hodor. Why is Hodor freaking out?
Right. Yeah. That's my number one too. Is Bran warging into Hodor? So we can just collab on that.
Okay, because so I had this thought.
He's Rhaegar.
Hodor is Rhaegar. No, okay, so is Hodor freaking out because he sent there's trouble's coming and he
thinks it's time to hold the door.
Exactly. Is he thinking he knows there's going to be a time, but he doesn't know which time it's going to be or what is going to happen. He just knows they're going to be in a place and he's going to have to hold the door.
Right. I'm with you on that one. I think he doesn't know and he's starting to panic.
He's just like, oh no, is it time to hold the door?
Oh my God, that's intense. And the other thing too that's crazy about this is that nobody has the capacity, as Jojen mentions, to warg into a human. And maybe Bran had it a little bit easier than any other people that have tried, because the first time that Hodor got hacked, we could say, was with future stronger Bran, when he needed Hodor's help to hold the door, and he was in that vision back in time, and young Hodor got Hodor'd by Bran, right? So that was the first time that Bran warged into Hodor. So Hodor was already like a worn shoe kind of at this point, you know what I mean? He had already had Bran warg into him when he was a little boy. So for Bran, even weaker Bran at this point than he becomes, it was just weakened enough, Hodor's psyche, where Bran could slip in there now, because it's a presence that it's already been in Hodor's head since he was a little kid. So it's just like, this is like the first, but also the second time that Bran and Hodor have like mentally connected like that. You know what I mean? It's so weird. Like the whole loop thing is so bugged out.
Time loop.
It's like that bootstrap paradox is like what they call, but like it's like, okay, so is he able to like easily warg into him now because he's become a simpleton because he like got brain damage from the last time? Did he have that seizure because he was trying to warg into him from the future, like while he was like a vision in the past or something?
Maybe.
It was just like
another reason he may have been getting nervous was because potentially when Bran warged with Hodor when Hodor was young and Bran was older, maybe some of Bran's memories, got pushed into young Hodor's mind. Like he knows he has to hold the door, which is a memory from the future from Bran, so maybe he knew that Bran was about to warg into him because he had a memory from Bran of it happening, and he was like, "Oh my god, it's about to happen! It's about to happen!" I
totally agree with that, because all he says is Hodor. So I mean, Hodor comes from hold the door, as we come to find out. So I totally agree with you, Duncan, that Hodor may be freaking out because he knows that Bran's about to warg into him.
Like, what if on a separate timeline, like, what if the last time around, like, this was the time where you had to hold the door, but it changes each time because the three-eyed raven is like adjusting things and like going back and be like,
well, and the future is kind of unpredictable. I mean, like things that happen in the present can change the future. So while Hodor's fate in the show, and I'm totally like going off on a weird tinfoil tangent.
Triple T.
You know, it's like, so time loops. So in the future, like if we're in the present and I decide to do something different than what I did in the first time loop, could change the whole future. So from Hodor's perspective, if he doesn't ever really know when to hold the door is actually going to happen, because
it'll happen at different times.
It may happen at a different time or a different place, because depending on how people are living out their present situations is changing the future. So while in the series we see Hodor die holding the door in that cave, in Hodor's mind, I mean, freaking God, I don't even know. I'm totally going way off the deep end here, but like, maybe he's relived this like 100 times, and every time it's been different because the future completely depends on people's actions in the present.
Exactly, I'm totally with you.
Or it could be like Lost, where whatever happened happened.
Where it's just a mystery box. It's like, oh, it's like, isn't that weird? But okay, so like George R.R. Martin has said that Planetos is Earth on a different timeline, and so I believe that show continuity is just
alternate timelines as well.
Yeah,
like
it's Planetos on a different timeline than the book. But
okay,
and there's
cool.
certain like
that's what I like about Walking Dead too. It's like parallel universes. One, the show one, the book the other.
Yeah, and I feel like there are these like deliberately implied alternate timelines of like what could have happened if like the person like went from A to B instead of A to C or whatever, like zigged instead of zagged, and like it sent them on a different, and you can sort of like, it's kind of fun to like sort of track like, well, if this didn't happen then. And you can see the whole like chain of events, and you can almost imagine like a different story. But I want to offer another alternative to the theory that I just like put all that into. Now, like Hodor starts freaking out, the horses are freaking out. Maybe he's just freaking out because he can smell trouble because he's part giant. Because he's got a good sense of smell.
That's funny.
And I think,
well,
yeah.
It's possible, man.
Maybe the thunder. Because Hodor is like freaking out because of the thunder.
Yeah,
maybe the thunder sounds like the banging
on the door.
On the door.
Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
When he's holding the door, there's all that banging, and it's like, I mean,
Oh, wow.
So maybe the thunder is kind of like doing crazy. Like this like thing in his brain to where
like
it's
PTSD.
A little bit of PTSD where he can't tell if
it's
the future.
Yeah,
exactly. He's like he can't tell if it's thunder or if it's banging on the door, and he's just like having this like whole freak out.
In this case, it would be pre-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
Post-traumatic
stress.
Pre-traumatic stress.
Pre-traumatic traumatic.
Wow.
That's great.
Pre-post traumatic stress.
Yeah.
Paradox traumatic stress.
There you go.
That's crazy. This is Bran's kind of like Luke Skywalker moment, right? Where he finally is able to sort of focus his energy and harness his power and force warg into Hodor. Yeah, exactly.
Finds out his brother is actually sleeping with his dad.
Yeah, it reminded me of that moment, Johnny. You're a big Star Wars guy. You might see the similarity here.
Just a little bit.
Where like Luke is hanging upside down on Hoth, and he has to focus his powers in a dire situation, right? And he grabs the lightsaber with the Force. Do you see any parallel there?
Oh, definitely. Or like in the more new movies, because Rey's even more of a novice, and like she sits there and focuses on getting into that trooper's mind to let her go. You know, and she has like barely any experience, knows of
That's
it. But
so funny too. It's a great scene.
Fucking James Bond.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so funny. Yeah, so that was like his Luke Skywalker moment. So Bran, or maybe his Anakin moment. Maybe he's if he's the Night King, maybe he's the one that's been chosen to bring balance to
So do you
Westeros.
guys think that Jojen knew Bran could warg into humans? Because like the way he responded to Bran, he was like, no one is able to do that.
Yeah, he probably knew.
But he kind of like looked at Bran like, but I knew you could.
All right. Okay, so my take on it is that Bran is, the Stark, and Asha is the Firstman, and then Mira and Jojen are the children of the forest, and Hodor is the giant, and it's just
a microcosm.
Parallels. Yeah, it's like rhyming. It's history repeating itself, and it's like
that's so funny.
The children, the giants, the Firstmen, and the Starks like banding together to face the long night.
Interesting. I like that theory. Okay.
Yeah.
I follow you.
That's cool.
Right on.
Yeah, all the giants, they got those weird names. Hodor, 1-1.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
One Wig, One Dar, One.
Yeah, One Wig, One Dar.
I like
Jolly Green.
something like that. Yeah, Jolly Green. Osha proves that she's good here too, and she's which is kind of cool. Bran has his touching moment with Rickon, where Rickon's like, "I'm your brother. I need to protect you." It's hilarious.
I like how Asha's like, "Well, it's cool. We'll cross the narrow sea and we'll go on some adventures." And it's just like you don't see them again until they're captured by what is it? Is it the Karstarks or the Umbers?
I think
the
Umbers.
Question.
Umber. Yeah, one of the Umbers gets him.
And she's all telling.
Yeah, because here they're planning to go to the Umbers as well.
Yeah, and she's
so
telling.
They probably got to the Umbers and then they got captured.
They were there for a little while before that happened, because the Umbers were still on the Stark side for a little while longer.
Flipped on them, and
so maybe they went on some adventures first.
Yeah, that would make a fun spin-off.
Yeah.
Also, Small John Umber should not exist. Just throwing that out there.
Why?
There's the whole. Small John Umber like cut Shaggy Head's dog off and all that stuff. He dies at the Red Wedding in the books.
Oh, right.
He's like dead.
Yeah, that's funny.
So I've been saying that ever since the whole Umber.
You shouldn't have even been there.
You shouldn't have even existed. What do you mean you're turning on the Starks and everything?
Well, isn't there a theory out there that wasn't really Shaggy Dog's head because it was too small to be a dire wolf?
Yeah, but now it's like it's way past that to where there's no.
Okay.
The special effects guys denied that they're like, no, that's the direwolf's head.
They made it way too small because Ghost's head is like twice that size.
Yeah.
Ghost is the freak though.
I just don't trust anybody.
Yeah.
Isn't Rickon even played by a different kid in that season?
No, it's the same
guy.
It's the same
He's just a lot
guy.
older.
He just went through puberty.
Okay.
He's like, I'm your little brother. I'm supposed to protect you. Well, you can protect me by serpentating.
Oh, yeah, by serpentating. Serpentine, Rickon.
I like how you guys, I think Duncan points out that, like...
Every time.
I got so
people criticize him like I wouldn't know to do that. Like if I was freaking out and panicking and seeing someone was shooting an arrow at me, I wouldn't be like, "Oh, it's time to run zigzag."
He's a little kid, and
I play a lot of video games.
What were you gonna say, Johnny?
People who have the advantage of playing a lot of video games will like get like cocky.
Okay, well, I play a lot of video games, but I'm a healer, so I usually get to stand in the back and just stand still and try to heal all the people zigzagging out of my like line of sight, and then having them be like, "Why don't you fucking heal me?" And I'm like, "I ran out of my line of sight."
Yeah.
The WoW days.
During the rewatches, we made that joke because every time he says that line, I know how to use a sword or I know how to hold a sword. I was like, well, you don't know how to run. It's like, but it was like, and then the second time I did the rewatch, or like just a few days ago, I said it again on Influx, and my wife's like, you said that last week too. I was like, oh.
Did anybody notice when Shaggy Dog was like trotting off? Did it occur to anybody that that's the last time you're ever going to see him alive?
No.
I thought about that while watching it. I'm like, well, there goes Shaggy Dog, and that's the last time I'm ever going to see him.
So we kind of lose two direwolves in this episode.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah, that was
the last time to see him alive.
This episode just keeps getting worse.
Yeah, it just keeps getting more and more
It's
brutal.
like death. They should have just labeled it like Death Central.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this is
Dead
like,
wet.
I think it's like at this point, this is when you really start to see all like the memes popping up about, and like people are just like, you know, you'll see that Ramsey quote about like, if you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention. And it's kind of like, they sort of like have us like at this point where nobody really feels safe about anybody at any given time.
Isn't there that funny quote like George Martin said too at one point? Somebody was like heckling him at a convention or something. He said, "Be nice to me or I'll kill somebody you love."
Except Arya,
He means
because his wife said he would divorce him if
killed her.
he killed off Arya.
That's not Arya. That's the wave.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's possible.
That's his little way of like sticking up his middle finger behind his wife's back and being like, well, you know, I'm the only one who knows that it's not even her anymore. That's the waif wearing her skin.
Yeah, otherwise she healed from miraculously from that gut wound.
Well, yeah, you could look at it. You could look at it either way. Which I kind of like enjoy. It's just like that. Really, you don't know that that's Arya, but
right.
You kind of know. But it's like, well, do I know? It's because I want it to be Arya.
She definitely seems to be Arya.
Doesn't necessarily mean it is.
She seems to know stuff, you know, that Arya would know based on her like interactions with people at Winterfell. And
Nymeria.
Stuff. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Nymeria part. That's important too.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why she turned away.
Because it's the waif.
It's not Arya. That's why
Oh, right. But she did talk to Nymeria. She'd like recognized who Nymeria was.
And it was a total reference to back in season 1 when she says to Ned,
That's
that's not me.
Right. When she's on the stairs and he's telling her, like,
yes.
Sansa.
Like, you're going to marry a lord and be a lady of a castle. She goes, no, that's not me.
That's
But she looks at Nymeria, who's like wild and free and has a pack of her own. And she goes, come back, girl. I'm going to Winterfell. Come with me. And then Nymeria turns her back and she goes, it's not you. And she had like a small smirk on her face, and I loved that scene. It's like, oh,
yeah,
she totally gets her because they're like the same people. They're the same soul.
If you love her, let her go.
Like, no, we don't have the budget.
That's what I was thinking.
I hope her pack shows up in season 8 when
Oh,
like
I
all the
know.
main stuff's going down.
I think it's going to, because what was the purpose of that scene other than foreshadowing something that's going to happen in season 8?
Dark ammo.
If I don't see Arya like riding on the back of Nymeria with her like bloody like
Flaming
eyes
dagger
gouged out by the mountain, I don't know. It's just an image. Once I thought of it, I'm like, I have to see that.
That'd be crazy.
At least riding the wolf, but you know, she learned to fight blind.
She
in
can
the
use,
mountain.
yeah, she can use potentially. I mean, if she can warg, you know, she could use Nymeria's eyes.
Oh,
As some of the Stark children, maybe other ones could warg.
Isn't there a theory out there, and again, I'm not like a major book reader, but I'm not afraid of like book spoilers, that all the Stark children can warg into their wolves?
There's definitely a theory.
Yeah.
Definitely. So anything else you guys want to mention about Bran and warging and Hodor and Luke Skywalker and time loops? Triple TLTs.
I can always talk about Luke Skywalker.
I'll talk about time loop.
Darth Vader's his dad.
Oh man, you bastard!
Oh my god, why did you have to spoil that for me?
Oh my god.
It's also Mufasa, sorry.
Luke Skywalker's
Simba.
actually Jamie, by the way.
Robert Duvall's brother.
Yeah, losing a hand
Yeah,
and everything.
no hands. Yeah.
He lost a hand, got it replaced by a replica. There's some twin cest, and he killed his father, who used to be good, became evil. So.
Has an evil ruler father.
Because the Mad King's his father.
That's funny.
Has everyone said their number ones yet?
Yeah, I think so. So
can I throw on just an extra little?
yeah,
piece
let's
then?
go through our notes. If anybody else has notes, like extra stuff to talk about.
I just wanted to. It's kind of like a note that I marked down. And did you guys have any reactions with people like right after you watched the Red Wedding? Because
What do you mean?
I watched it and I was just like, man. And then all my friends who watched, the Red Wedding episode, we were all like talking about it. And so I had the episode on a flash drive, and my brother was watching it, and I left it for him. And so I left him a note, and I put the flash drive on there. I said, so my friends are in this band called Seven Kingdoms,
Sick
and
band.
it's a power metal, female fronted power metal band.
We've played
and,
their music on the show before.
Yeah, which I've been meaning
They're
to tell
awesome.
you, Duncan. The song "The King in the North" would be like the perfect song for this episode if you get around to it. It's all about Robb Stark and the Freys and the murder. And
Nice.
anyways, so one of the quotes is, "The bards shall sing tale of the Red Wedding." So I wrote that on a piece of paper. And I said, finally, we get a happy Game of Thrones episode. And I left it for my brother. And he texted me back, and I forget exactly what he said, but it was something along the lines
You
of like,
fucking-
what the fuck? You know?
That's
And then my
crazy.
other
Awesome.
friend, Christian, he was watching the episode, and he's like, oh boy, I'm starting the Red Wedding episode today or whatever. And I just replied back, LOL. And then I was at work, and then like an hour later, it was just all capitals in his message. Just like going off on it. I was
Oh,
just
yeah.
curious if you guys had any funny interactions with friends or anything.
I actually, when I watched it the very first time, I had already read the chapter.
Okay.
So, I mean, I was still shocked because, I mean,
Seeing it.
again, they throw lines in the episode about, without getting any book spoilers, but even in the episode, Frey says, I can't believe he brought you here. And it's like, I see what you're doing there, writers of the show, to like, poke at book people that have seen it. Because it is different than what happens in the book. But, so I still, watching it the first time, I kind of knew what was going to happen, or knew it was going to be devastating, just because, I mean, in the book, when you finish that part and how it all goes down, it's not like the end of the novel. It's like 3/4 through it, I think, or a little over halfway through, and it's just
man.
you almost feel like, is the next page just blank? Because what the hell happened here,
Yeah, what could possibly
So I knew what to
follow?
expect, but when I watched it, I didn't hold the cell phone out like a lot of people did, but I did watch my wife the whole time. Like, I mean, after the Talisa thing happens, I knew from there, I'm like, okay, I know where this is going now. But yeah, so watching her reaction was kind of cool because, I mean, I kind of was already desensitized to, like, I knew it was coming, I just didn't know how they were going to do it.
Right.
I mean, I figured it was coming because it was getting towards the end of season 3, and for any of the book readers, you realize, like, the way they split the seasons up amongst the books, like, again, like, half of season 4 is the other half of book 3, and those kinds of things. So it's
Right. Yeah, season 1 is book 1, season 2 is book 2, kind of.
yeah.
Season 3 is like the
And-
first half of book 3 or something.
Right. So I kind of knew, it was like, by the time we're already 8 episodes into the series and we're about to start episode 9, I'm like, okay, they got to kind of start getting to this around now, or is this going to be in season 4? They can't open season 4 with this. So, yeah, I mean, it was funny, though, watching her reactions, because, I mean, it was just like, and I put that in my notes, too, just, if you have not Googled it yet, just, even today, they hold up. Just go to YouTube
Red Wedding
and Google
reactions.
Red Wedding reactions and just go around hours and hours of...
Oh my god, I can't even imagine.
My favorite is Maisie Williams reacting to it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that one, yeah.
Oh man, that's brutal.
Because it's hilarious. She's just like, they's dead. My mother and brother. They're dead. And her eyes.
I mean, the immediate reaction that I had was, like, I was with my husband and it was silent, and we just kind of like sat there for like a minute, and then we kind of looked at each other and we were like, what the fuck just happened? And then I remember, I
Real.
can't remember what I watched after, but we both were like, we need to watch something like a little bit more uplifting before we go to bed. So I don't even remember what we watched, because the whole time, whatever we were watching, I think it was Billions. And all I could think of is like, oh my God, the Starks are dead. And then the next day, I work from home mostly. At least at the time that I watched the Red Wedding, I worked solely from home. So I like got up in the morning and I felt like super depressed. I was so depressed. And I like logged on and I was like, I need to go for like a walk or something to clear my mind. Because
hilarious.
I seriously was so cloudy the next day because it was just a lot to process. And I mean, what happened in was it like 10, 15 minutes? I should have timed it.
10 minutes.
But I mean, like in a 10 to 15 minute time frame, what happened in that 10 to 15 minutes could have been like an entire episode in its own.
Right.
There was so much to process. There were so many main characters. There was so much at stake. There was so much going on. Like, it took me like a day or two to process, for sure.
It's kind of cool the way it sort of plays out with, first of all, like one of the Freys walking towards the double doors and closing them, and turning around and
with
walking.
The seven.
Yeah, with the the like the 7-pointed star outside, you know, and Catelyn's like, oh, that's kind of weird. And right as he closes his doors and starts walking back, then all of a sudden the music changes from the Bear and the Maiden Fair, which they're listening to as the bedding ceremony was taking place, and it switches to the Rains of Castamere. And like we mentioned before, that was, you know, they explained that story in the last episode, setting us up for this. So being quite astute, you know, and not completely an idiot, having grown up in Westeros, Kat immediately notices that all these things are fucked up all of a sudden, right? You know, she's like, why are the doors closed? Why are they playing this fucking somber song? And it's one of the guys in the band is Will Champion from Coldplay. I guess the drummer of Coldplay is up there.
Oh, really?
So damn you, Coldplay, for killing Robb Stark. Yeah.
So
And that was some Coldplay.
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Johnny?
So, yeah, I mean, I guess this isn't a huge book spoiler, but is it okay to talk about the band difference, or?
The band. Yeah, sure, that should be fine.
Yeah, in the novel, the band plays like shit because they're all crossbowmen.
Crossbowmen, yeah.
But
I forgot about that.
In the episode, they play amazing, and not only that, the writers made sure that, I can't remember who comments, if it's Catelyn, someone comments on how beautiful the music is being played earlier in the wedding.
Oh, God.
And it's like, oh man, really? You know, so it's just, you know, kind of reach out there, because that's how you knew something was up. That was one of the telltale signs in the novel, because they do such a major job of like describing how much they're butchering that song.
That's so funny.
So maybe it's sort of like a red herring, to throw off book readers to be like, maybe
things
it's
are different. Yeah. That's
maybe,
great.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
this is going to be nicer, not as harsh.
Yeah.
No, it's worse.
No, we're going to start with some infanticide in your face.
It's like, well, yeah, Alyssa wasn't there in the books, and there's no way they'd kill a baby.
Right.
That must mean that she's safe, and it's going to
there's no baby.
Like Judith's
minus all the
alive.
baby killing that occurs in the show afterwards.
Yeah, but it's like people would block that out. They completely repressed that memory.
So speaking of the music, when they first start the Red Wedding scene and they're all laughing and the flaccid fish is feeding blackberries to Rosalind Frey, the music that's playing, that upbeat song, plays in a lot of the weddings. It plays at Joffrey's wedding as well. And so I found that kind of interesting, because also at Joffrey's wedding, they play the Rains of Castamere.
Right.
And so they also play I believe, and I hope I don't get this wrong, I believe they also played the Bear and the Maiden Fair at Joffrey's wedding, and I'm totally going off just like memory of sleepless nights watching the show, but I'm pretty sure they play it. So all of the music that plays at Joffrey's wedding is
another
also
dead
played,
wedding?
at the Red Wedding, but that same upbeat music is also played at Tommen and Marjorie's wedding. I don't know about Rains of Castamere and the Bear and the Maiden Fair, but I know for a fact that upbeat song plays at all 3 weddings, and Tommen ends up, committing suicide. So, but it's like
3 weddings that are never consummated.
Maybe
Tommen's was.
In the show, Tommen's is, but I know in the novels, just off book spoilers, that he's too young. He's like 12, so I know that it's not consummated in the novel, but it's not like a recognizable song like The Bear and the Maiden Fair or Rains of Castamere, but it's the same beat. So if you listen to when they're first they're eating blackberries, they pan over to Rob and to Lessa, and they're schmoozing with each other. That song that's playing in that moment plays in Joffrey's wedding and Tommen's wedding as well. So
it's like upbeat. It's like stock upbeat festival music.
Yes.
They just keep music. That's so funny.
And I'm not going to terrorize our fans by trying to
recreate it.
Hum it, but just rewind it, watch it, and then as the next weddings occur, just keep that melody in your mind, and you'll be like, holy shit, it's the same song.
That's funny. I just looked into this a little bit while editing this episode, and I can't find a name for this song, but there's videos of it on YouTube, and it's out there, unnamed, just lurking, waiting for the next wedding. Or if anybody has a name for it, let us know, please. Thanks.
Did you guys notice the cloak clasps on Rob's cloak?
I did not.
No.
So they're 2 dire wolves, pretty slim, narrow ones. So I'm a costumer and a cosplayer, so I look at stuff like this all the time. And they're the same clasps that Sansa wears in season 7 on her cloak.
Oh, cool.
So she's paying homage.
Facing each other, the ones that face each other?
Yeah, they're holding the cloak.
That's cool.
Facing each other, kind of like John's on his gorget, but I mean just on her cloak, the way that it's clasped. So she's been paying a lot of homage to, where she's from, her
real
family.
Slick costume design in this show for sure.
And Sansa's she changes her hair to match Cersei, to match her mom, to match
Marjorie.
Marjorie, and the season 7 costume.
If Arya is a faceless man, Sansa's a hairless woman.
The season 7 costume is the belt. I read a bunch of costuming stuff on it. I've made that belt for that. I don't know, waist belt, whatever you call it, the leather one that she's wearing in season 7. So that one was the Michelle Clapton, I think is her name. She the whole story behind that is it's fending off Littlefinger. It symbolizes this is off limits. And then her hair is paying homage to her mom's whole side of things, and then the cloak, the clasps are, or the brooches, I should say.
Yeah, to Rob. And then the wolf around her neck to Ned.
Yeah, and then the And so
is that what that is? Because John wears one too. It's supposed to be a wolf. It's not like a fox pet. Or.
It's actually Sansa's in season 6 is a silver fox.
Oh, interesting.
And John's is in season 6. It's a cross fox, and then in season 7 it becomes, I want to say, coyote type. I mean, based on the real materials that they use, because I created.
Because I felt like a wolf pelt would be a lot bigger than what is portrayed on their cloaks.
Yeah,
not dire wolf standards, but just a regular 150 pound wolf.
That's why I didn't get wolf for my cloaks, because I cosplay Jon Snow as well, and
you're John Crow though.
John Crow,
Obsidian Crow.
Well, I mean, I cosplay Night's Watch too, but I mean, I made the season 7 outfit. the metal gorget, everything. And that
yeah,
one,
that's sick too. That thing looks good, man.
my blacksmith friend in Puerto Rico, man, he's like one of the best.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Do you have an authentic Kia rug for your Night's Watch?
Yeah, good point.
Thank you.
But yeah, the fox, it's a fox, a cross fox for Jon Snow.
Oh, cool.
And
God, why are you guys killing my people?
Death to House Fox.
Yeah, the whole IKEA thing, that was funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was just one of the notes I had. Was sorry to go off tangent.
I have a related note.
Go for it.
Just something I've noticed. Asha, I think it's since she put down Maester Lewin and he like told her to take care of the Stark kids. Like she went from having her hair like in front of her face all twisted up to like from then on she's been wearing the traditional Stark hairstyle.
True. Yeah, she's got it pulled back like
half up, half down.
Yeah.
I liked how I never really got to finish my point earlier, but I liked how she pledged her loyalty to the Stark family in this episode basically and said, you guys picked me up when I was down and took me into your family and gave me a role and a purpose, and I'm gonna fucking get this kid to safety. You know what I mean? That was pretty cool. She's gonna try at least.
I wanted to mention that because she's like, we're going to go to the safety of the Umbers. The Umbers are great warriors. We'll be safe with them. Even I know of what great warriors they are. It's like, yeah, because the Umbers, like, kill wildlings all the time.
Yeah, they hate them.
That's their whole thing. That's, like, what they do. And so she's just like, oh, yeah, I'll bring you... Yeah, I know about the mighty warriors, the Umbers, and... Yeah.
Yeah. I had a note about Sandor in this episode. We get to see how, like, monstrously strong he is when he shows up and lifts that wagon up.
Oh yeah.
Like that must be so heavy. Can't even imagine how heavy that would be. And he just lifts it right up so the guys can put the new wheel on or the repaired wheel or whatever.
It's a hand.
And notice how he, before he knocks him out, he lets that guy help him put the wheel on.
Yeah, so that he can
and then knocks him out.
Yeah.
He's like,
Dead rats don't speak.
Dead don't squeak. I was just going to say, he's got some good lines in this episode.
And is this the same dude that squeaked on Jaime and Brienne?
No, I doubt it. But it made me think of that,
Because it is like, this the repetition or the parallels or whatever, but it's like, in one case, somebody makes the right decision, and somebody makes the wrong decision in the other. Something like that.
Yeah, what is it?
Well, so what I just kind of came to, this isn't like a crazy point, but the rat king, like the fact that the Hound references rats in this specific episode where guest right is completely violated. The story that Bran tells about the Rat King and the guest right, I found that kind of interesting. Actually, like it was kind of just now like dead rats don't squeak. Okay, well, rats. And then they have their guest right. They eat the bread and salt and they all get slaughtered at the Red Wedding. But when Bran talks about the Rat King in the castle, like the story is like all about violating guest rights. So
right, yeah, good point.
I actually just kind of like made that connection. That it was just like a quick reference to rats. That
right, the Rat King
in a specific episode where guest right is completely violated.
Yeah, you mentioned rats. Yeah,
that makes sense.
That's pretty cool. The other part is the Hound tells her, she's, don't kill him, please don't. And the Hound says, you're very kind. Someday it'll get you killed, And Arya refuses to kill that actress lady, and because she's so kind. And
almost
then the wave
killed.
stabs her in the gut. Yeah. So it could foreshadow something else happening in the future, potentially to Arya because of her, that morality that she has, that compass. Maybe she'll hold back killing somebody and it'll get her killed next season or something.
It's also the Hound's kindness kind of gets him killed when he like challenges Brienne because he's trying to keep Arya safe.
Safe, true. Yeah, he sticks his neck out for Arya, almost gets him, or maybe, definitely almost gets him killed.
Well, in my opinion, it does get him killed and he is completely resurrected. That's just me.
there's another funny line. Rickon says, "Old Nan said they'll turn your skull into a cup and make you drink your own blood from it."
In the same episode with Roose Bolton turning out to be not who we thought he was. So,
right.
Maybe that's kind of an allusion to the bolt-on theory, which is I'd highly recommend looking up because it's really fun.
Oh, that's funny. I'll have to look it up. But this line with Rickon saying, because first of all, if you take somebody's skull and turn it into a cup, how are you going to make them drink out of it? You turn their skull into a cup, right?
Makes you drink out of your own skull?
Yeah, you drink your own blood.
Yeah.
So it reminded me of that line from Team America where he's like, "Oh, a flying limousine. Now I've seen everything." And he's like, "Have you seen a man eat his own head?" It's like, "No, then you haven't seen everything."
I love your voice of that. You could be like one of those like talk show news
the old timey voices.
Yeah.
Oh man. So yeah, that just made me think of that funny Team America part. Anybody got anything else you want to add about any notes or anything?
Yeah, I got something. So on my rewatch, I went ahead and I fast forwarded, and I had to watch just that excerpt from season 6, episode 10. Like, because I know it was a
The Winds of
spoiler
Winter
podcast up till 7. Yeah, but I mean, the season finale of season 6, just to watch Arya head back to Frey.
Oh
like
yeah.
That. I mean,
Oh yeah.
it was that thing that back in the day you couldn't watch because it didn't exist. But I was like, hell yeah, I'm doing a rewatch of the Red Wedding. I'm going to follow it right up.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm going to get my justice.
Make
so
myself
funny.
feel better.
Instant justice.
Exactly.
That's great. That's so funny. Yeah.
Like if I could show that to my 5-year younger self, like it's okay. Look, this is
Look
going to
what
happen.
happened.
I kind of feel like season 7 got a lot of guff from a lot of critics and everything, and I kind of feel like part of it is like there's sort of this learned helplessness, or how a dog can get addicted to being beaten by its owner or something, whereas people are
Stockholm
upset that
syndrome
season
type thing.
7 gives you what you want.
Didn't hurt
doesn't
them
break
as
your
much.
heart. Yeah, doesn't tear
Hit me
your
again,
guts out.
Ike. And this time, put some stank on it.
Season 8 is not going to be happy.
I was just going to say, I think season 8, we're all going to be like, oh my god.
Yeah, I don't think this series is gonna. That's what I was telling my wife the other night. I was like, what if it ends really with Cersei remaining on the throne? How much would everybody just
be so
hit the
pissed.
ceiling?
That'd be so funny, man.
Try to stay away from spoilers.
Ramsay Bolton said, if you have been watching and you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention.
Yeah,
so that always rings true anytime something positive starts to happen. I'm like, oh, I'm clearly not paying attention because I don't think this is going to have a happy ending.
Right.
I really don't.
It ends with Arya sitting on the throne, and then she pulls up her face, and it's Rhaegar!
Yeah, Jon and Dany both die. All the dragons die. Arya dies. Sansa's clinging to life. And Gendry dies. And everybody dies, basically. Maybe.
Everybody
but Bran
dies.
gets his castle, and that's all that really matters, right? In the end.
And I would be
Strong
kind
arm.
of okay with that.
Oh, man. Anybody else got any notes?
So I have a quick note, and it's a very fleeting moment that I just loved so much in a very dark and dreary episode, was when the wedding between Rosalind and the flaccid fish is going on, and the blackfish looks over at
The crones.
the ladies, and they all
They're all like, ew,
blackfish. And he's like, oh fuck.
He's like, I gotta go
Turns
piss.
right back.
It's
And
like,
I just love that moment because he's just relaxing, looking around, and 4 of them are like, oh hey, and he's like, oh fuck, and he just turns around and just okay, I'm just gonna pretend. So it's just kind of a quirky moment because I believe in the books. I've read a little bit about blackfish in the books. I'm a quarter of the way into book 2, I believe, at this point, and I believe he's supposed to be kind of portrayed as gay. I don't know if that's like continued through the series, but I just found that kind of funny that he, he's at the wedding and all these girls are like looking at him. He's like, "Oh, nope, not my type."
That's so funny.
Either way, them making him uneasy saved his life. Well,
Exactly.
prolonged it.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Well,
Yeah,
he's
he
still
picked the right
alive.
time.
Duncan helped me realize that on a previous episode. When he was talking about like, well, no, I mean,
never
there's
saw
no
him
way he
die.
could have gotten away because they would have like put out a dragnet and searched the area, and like as soon as he said that, I was like, wait, the phrase?
No, Jamie was in
Phrase?
control.
Oh, that's true.
Jamie was
Yeah.
in control.
He just
Like,
walked right past him.
The Freys are a bunch of idiots, and the Blackfish is like the slipperiest mamma jamma in the land.
Gone. He's down the river.
Yeah,
No pun intended, being that he's a fish.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
pun totally intended by GoM. It's all like in the symbolism. He's like he represents like he is this like he is like General Sherman, like the fish that you can never catch. And
You'll
he's
have
just
to,
like,
you'll have to continue reading the books.
Yeah. So I got
Damn you.
one thing I labeled under odd shit, and maybe you guys will
Awesome.
see this. How come it takes 25 to 30 wildlings to storm one old man with some horses outside his cottage? If you sit back in a rewatch and watch the scene, it's like something out of Braveheart. Only what
Just
they're
one little
going
guy.
after is just one old man.
They made so much more noise than they needed to. They could have snuck up so easily, but they decided
Jeez, I
to
was like,
charge with
three
battle
of them.
cries. And
well, they
like, this is
wanted people
overkill.
like they wanted to leave their calling card or something like that, or
we're
they're
wild and
They're
vicious.
just
And
jonesing for a kill.
Yeah, they just wanna
they're over
charge.
the wall. They're
Bum rush!
like,
Everybody go get him! It's just 30 like buff ass wildlings, crazy Ygritte, super killer, all these people rushing this old dude with some horses.
Yeah, and
So I
John
just thought
tips
it-
him off. With
Yeah, he hit the rock.
Smack
like
his sword
clanks
on the
the
rock.
sword on that rock, and the guy's like, "What was that?"
yeah, that was smooth.
He's like, "Oh fuck! I've got to get away from these crazy wildlings." That was funny.
I love that that's happening in the gift, like the land, the gift.
Yeah,
It's
Oh
if
man,
you research the history on the gift.
That's cool too. Yeah. Know what else was cool? When John is about to, well, he doesn't do it, but when it looks like he's about to execute the old guy there, and the old guy says to him, "She looks sharp," right, about his blade. Isn't that what Corn Halfhand says to him also before he kills the Half Hand? Doesn't he say like something about like his blade being sharp or something like that?
Oh man, so he's a Bolton. No, that's the Bolton motto: is our blades are sharp, right?
Oh, I don't know. Actually,
I'm pretty sure.
I don't know the Bolton words that you mentioned it.
Our blades are sharp.
That's pretty cool.
Here, I'll Google it.
Yeah.
Yeah, do it up.
Their blades are sharp because they were originally dragon glass blades, which is actually way sharper than steel, although more brittle, and they got the whole practice of flaying from the children of the forest.
That is their words. Our blades are sharp.
Nice.
Yeah.
Badass.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Good pull. Let's see. Anybody else got any notes? Anything worth mentioning?
I had another really short one with the Hound. When the Hound is talking to Arya, he goes, "Remember what happens to children that run." I thought that was a great coup to the first season about the butcher's boy.
Oh man,
He's totally like playing to her.
They
like,
took some digs
plot.
at each other for sure.
Yeah, they were digging at each other this whole episode, and I thought that was like,
Well, I know about your face. I know about your face. Oh, although that's ill in pain when he snipped your daddy's neck.
oh yeah. I mean, they like went at each other, but I thought that was like kind of a great cue. It's like, remember what happens to children that run, because the Hound ran him down. And Arya's face, she was just like, "Oh, you fucker."
Yep.
Possible foreshadowing of future Rickon.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Oh, yeah.
Children who run. I don't know.
I wrote down.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Speaking of the Hound in that same exact scene, my little side note was the fear quote that he made. Oh God, I just now I'm spacing on it because all I wrote when I was watching the episode was the Hound fear quote. So now I'm like, but no, it was she was talking about when she knows about his fear and how his face was pressed into flame.
She says, yeah, you're afraid. And she says, I'm not afraid. Of course you are. You're almost there and you're afraid you won't make it. The closer you get, the worse the fear gets. No point in trying to hide behind that face. I know fear when I see it. Seen it a lot.
Exactly, that quote.
Playing
I
the
just
lying
really
game.
like that.
Yeah, it was a cool moment. Yeah, they're going back and forth. Oh, before we were talking about the way that the Red Wedding sort of plays out. And so the doors close, the music starts. She kind of makes eye contact with Roose Bolton after they sort of sit down again. And it reminded me of the interrogation scene in The Dark Knight when the Joker kind of like rolls his head towards the cop and like gives him like a knowing smile after saying like, he's like, how many of your friends did I kill? 6, and he like kind of like rolls his head over. And so Roose Bolton kind of rolls his head over towards Catelyn and has this smug grin on his face. It's just really Joker-like to me for that moment. I was like, oh man, it gave me a vision of that scene from The Dark Knight.
I really like that the chemistry between Cat and Roose in
Quite good.
that whole
Quite good.
Yeah, like it the way it plays out, it almost seems like everybody's having a good time and like Roose and Cat are like getting along despite themselves, and
Right.
like it almost kind of like seems like they might even like hook up or something, or but and it's like the way he looks at her and then like looks down at his sleeve like, go ahead.
Yeah, take a look.
And she pulls up his sleeve and sees the chainmail, and it's just like, and he's just smiling, and it's just like
So
fuck.
fucked up.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so
Yeah.
crazy.
Oh, I learned something when I was doing a little bit more research earlier today. I can't remember who says it in the episode, but they're like, well, surely you must have had a betting ceremony.
Ned forbade
your
it.
wedding.
It's
Ned
Bolton.
forbade it. Yeah, was it Bolton?
Yes.
Yeah, and so she's like, no, something about a broken jaw or whatever.
Yeah.
And in the books, like she talks about that scene, and there actually was a betting ceremony. So I thought that was a little interesting. I think they were just trying to make small talk between Roose and Cat.
Ha! That's funny. So yeah, little details like that sometimes get changed on the show from the books. It's pretty cool.
It's like, did he break her jaw?
Her jaw.
Or did he? Or somebody's jaw. I'm sorry, I was really confused. Okay, so all right, so like there's a part when I don't know if this is in the books, but when Cat has the Kingslayer tied up and is asking him about like Bran and why he did it, and he just like confesses, just honest to her, and
Right.
then she's
so
like,
crazy.
she's holding a rock, she's holding a stone that she's about to like bash his head in with, and then like as he's telling her, she like clutches it right to her heart, and then like she like ultimately just like casts the stone away and then walks off. And so I don't know if that's different in the books, but I feel like it has bearing on like it's symbolic of like, she's holding the stone to her heart and then she casts it away, like she didn't take the path of vengeance with.
She's letting it go.
Yeah. And yeah.
Oh man.
You see what I'm doing here without actually like.
Yeah, totally.
Saying, okay, so yeah, I thought that was like interesting.
Yeah. Multiple paths and different choices, and at what point would she break and take the dark path?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's crazy, man. She decides not to kill Jaime, and then who knows what butterfly effect that had on the rest of the story as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously she doesn't kill him in the books either, but if she had that like that moment with him in the books where she had the chance to like choose like rage and vengeance or walk away kind of thing.
Yeah, pretty pivotal moment. I think that pretty much wraps up my notes. Anybody got anything else?
No, I'm done.
One really clever thing that somebody pointed out on Reddit, and I guess I'd like to give them credit they deserve.
Sure.
But I can't find it. But basically, it was Nashimat user. Anyway, but and I know he points out this line in the books, and Kat is thinking about the possible outcomes of the upcoming wedding, and she says that they are caught between Lannister and Greyjoy, and just noticing that, Lannisters, Casterly Rock, Greyjoy's Iron Island, rock in a hard place. Wah, wah, wah.
Classic.
Pretty good.
That's funny. One other thing I wrote down. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, just that she paraphrases it. She's like, says like in the episode, she says like caught between the Lannisters and the sea. And so it's like she kind of like, I don't know,
implies it sort of.
Yeah, I guess it might have been too obvious, or maybe they changed it because they didn't catch the pun when the show writers.
Oh, the show writers modified it because they didn't understand it in the first place.
Yeah,
that's funny. One other thing I wrote down was that I was surprised that Arya didn't let out like a blood-curdling scream when Grey Wind got shot right in front of her. I don't know if I would have been able to contain myself at that moment.
Yeah, I
think
probably
she was
wouldn't have.
Probably so frightened because like you see her like when the Freys run by and she like pretends to be like a barrel.
Oh yeah.
Within the barrels, it's like she's trying to process everything that's happening, and in that moment, she's probably just terrified. And like when you go into nature, like fight or flight or run or stay or scream or yell or stay quiet, survival kicks in that moment. Probably her instinct kicked in.
Mm-hmm.
And she was just like, oh, fuck. Like, because she was sitting there, like, I had this in my notes. She was so happy to hear, like, the northern accent. They're like, yeah, we're going to go back to Winterfell A. And she was like, oh, like, the northern people. And she's about ready to walk over there. They're right there. They're, like, tangible. She can hear them. She can smell them. She could
practically
yell
reach
out
and
to them.
pluck one from this.
Yeah, and then they all get slaughtered. And I think in her moment of maybe just, like, human instinct, she was just like, oh, fuck, I need to hide. Because I'm a northerner. And watching Grey Wind, as much as she probably wanted to cry and yell and run over there, her own instinct of survival kind of overpowered that feeling of screaming because
that reaction
of
that might
the pain
take place.
And also, I mean, she knew Grey Wind, but she left for King's Landing like very shortly after they got their dire wolves. So like, while she knew Grey Wind, I don't think she maybe necessarily had like an emotional connection to Grey Wind.
Gotcha.
So it's like why it was terrible that it was her brother's wolf being killed. It wasn't the same as like Nymeria being killed, or maybe even Lady at that point, because she traveled with
Spent
Lady
more time with Lady and everything.
Yeah. So, because it had been a while. I mean, it'd been like 2 years, 3 years. I don't know what the storyline is in the book, but like I would imagine 2 years at least
since they got the
last
direwolves.
time. Yeah, since she had seen Grey Wind.
Oh, potentially.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like there was distance between their connection, and while it was heartbreaking, she, her own instinct of survival kicked in over like grief.
I've seen this episode so many times, and I realized this episode as I watched Arya witness the betrayal of the Stark men there, that she saw that and knew that the fix was in and that like she needed to hide. But it was that scene happens immediately after Talisa gets stabbed in the stomach, after the baby gets stabbed. And I think it's that moment is like so like such a gut punch, when the baby gets stabbed, that like I never noticed Arya seeing all those guys get betrayed before. Like I have to have seen this like, at least a dozen times.
Because you're in total shock at the moment. Like the whole last 10, 15 minutes of that episode is just like shock value.
Yeah.
But like not shock value.
Yeah, not not meant that way. Like, but
not
it is.
To
it's just so shocking.
I mean, it changes the whole. It changes the whole like outline of the entire story. So it's not shock value to like discredit the storyline, but you're literally shocked that. I mean, it's shocking what's happening. And it's like you see a pregnant woman being stabbed. You see like all these men being stabbed. You see like this group of men outside being stabbed. Then you see like this beautiful, rare creature being murdered, who's like a huge connection to the Stark line. You see Arya like almost being reunited with her family, but then not. And then you see Robb and Kat, and it's like it's too much to take in. This whole episode.
So that pretty much wraps up our notes, right? Anybody else got anything you want to add?
Oh,
I think I'm good.
Clear.
Last call.
Always with the one last thing from me. But remember in the Battle of Blackwater when the bells are going off and Varys says that line about, I hate the sound of bells. They only chime for war or something. And then
for war and death or something.
And then Tyrion says, also for weddings. And Varys is like, I know, the worst. Or something like that.
So you think you knew?
Oh, yeah.
That's so funny.
I don't know if the Rains of Castamere had plays like prior to that, because that's the episode where I really actually started to notice it and become familiar with it, because Bran sings it and then it plays at the end. But they end that episode with Rains of Castamere, so I thought that was pretty interesting.
That is pretty funny.
Yeah.
Total foreshadow.
This is a big moment for the series, and it changes everything moving forward from here, right?
Most definitely. I agree.
All right, we will be right back.
Winter is coming, but Rob, your death is near. The band strikes up the Rains of Castamere. They'll trade their loots for crossbows, oh yeah. The betting ceremony won't have the only blood. Hurry up now, crossbows. It's a nice day to kill a king. It's a nice day for a red wedding. Tell the world that I've killed the Starks. Ow!
And we are back with more Game of Microphones. Wait, what's that off in the distance? Do you hear it? Sir Angelo of House Perez says it was sad. Agreed, Angelo. The Lady Bridget of House McNeese says, I didn't start watching the show or reading the books until after season 3 was out. Someone mentioned the Red Wedding before I got to it, so I cheated and spoiled myself about it. That still didn't prepare me for how hard it was to watch. Seeing Arya get so close to being reunited with her family, Catelyn realizing what was happening, then all the stabbing and throat slitting was just heartbreaking. Darn Walder Frey for breaking the rules of guest right. Great episode, and I really think they did justice to the book, even with some of the differences between the two. Sir Matthew Rep says, knowing what is to come, this following quote from Walder Frey right after the bread and salt is served could not be any more ominous. Well, let's get ready. The wine will flow red, and the music will play loud, and we'll put this mess behind us. It was the Stark's blood that ran red while the band played the Rains of Castamere. I didn't pick up on this foreshadowing until just now, and man, it was like a gut punch. Thanks for writing, Sir Matthew. Lord Santos of House Sanchez says, okay, I didn't rewatch it recently, but what I do know and am most surprised about is how brutally they take Talisa out. Vicious. The only thing more harrowing was Catelyn's wail of anguish once Robb took his final breath. Thanks for writing, Santos. Sir Nick Quinto says, it's a great day for a red wedding. Lady Angelica of House Garcia Decker says, my heart cannot take this episode, but I watch it every time when Robb turns to Catelyn after she's basically begging Walder Frey that he was her firstborn son, and he says, Mother, as they do it to him, absolutely shatters me. It is so well acted and so visceral. Fuck Walder Frey. Could not agree more. Lady Angelica. Lady Caroline Grenier says, I spoiled myself when someone talked about Game of Thrones to me and about how hard it was to watch, and especially the Red Wedding. Therefore, I didn't find the scene as shocking as I could have. But, while I rethink about it, I just can't believe how they killed 2 major characters in one scene. Also, I found that overall the Freys and the Boltons are the worst traitors in the series. I know it's only in the next episode or so, but the scene when Robb's body is carried with the head of Greywind instead makes me sad and disgusted each time. Agreed, that is a brutal scene, Lady Caroline.
Hi, Duncan. This is Lady Caroline Collins leaving my feedback for the Red Wedding. Thanks for making me rewatch it twice now. So, yeah, I had to do that. And it really sucked. But it was a great episode, so it didn't really suck, but it was still painful to watch right at the end.
It was worth it. It was worth it.
But I had a few things that I wanted to talk about, so I thought I'd leave it here. Thank you so much for last week's episode with Lady Rachel. That was really great.
You are welcome.
To hear you guys, and I'll get just right into it, no more. So the first thing I want to talk about is the first scene we see is the chess pieces, or the the battle strategy pieces on the map that they're working with in the tent, and you see Robb Stark and Catelyn talking about the strategy of taking Castle Rock, and in the first shot they have the piece of the flayed man, Lord Bolton's sigil, behind the castle of the Twin Towers, the Frey's sigil. So it's like an immediate, nonverbal, symbolic representation of what's going to happen at the end of this episode. And I thought it was so clever that they did that. I mean, the showrunners are really good at doing these little things that don't require any words. They just tell you exactly what's going to happen, and if you know what's coming, it's like right there in your face. The first moment of the episode, which was really clever, I thought. And then it did a few other little nods, and actually there's a couple of little book nods that I wanted to talk about, but I don't think I'm not going to give anything away, I promise. So there's one book
I'll take
nod
your word
that
for it.
When you see Sam and Gilly and they approach the night fort, he mentions that they're near the night fort, and he talks a little bit about the history of it, which is always cool to hear. But what I thought of immediately when I thought of the night fort is all the cool stories of old Nan told them about what happens in the night fort, and that's kind of when you really learn initially about the idea of guest right and the fact that the North really does take it seriously. So that was really cool that they sort of addressed it in that way. So it was like kind of reminding book readers, oh yeah, that's the night fort. That's when all that stuff happened, and that's where you learn about guest right. And I think a Game of Thrones is when they mention it first.
Love that story.
So it's pretty cool. And then another little book nod right at the beginning as well, when they arrive at the twins, and Walder Frey says to Talisa, if you wanted to hide her, you shouldn't have brought her. And book readers know that's a little that's kind of making note of the fact that in the books the character Talisa is a little bit different and things go a little differently. So I thought that was kind of clever that they added that. And a few other things. I do love the tower scene in with Bran and Hodor, and then Jon and the wildlings on the outside. And I love how Martin wrote that. It's very cool how it goes back and forth, and you see it through the eyes of Summer a little bit.
That's really cool.
I think they did a pretty good job of capturing that. It's really hard to do with the dire wolves and stuff and everything happening so fast, but I thought that they were really clever about a few things that they did with it. And I wanted to point out that it's the first time that Bran wargs into Hodor, and I just watched it again and I realized it's actually the first time that he meaningfully wargs into summer as well, because before he was doing it in his dreams, but now he's able to do it waking and use it for strategy and use it to defeat their enemies. And so, but the first time he works into Hodor, and then of course the last time is when Hodor gives his life to make sure that they get away, which happens in season 6. So, and they talk about that's a horse dying. They hear that sound outside, and I thought immediately that like Hodor is Bran's horse. He's kind of the way that Bran gets around.
It's true.
So I doubt that it's deliberate foreshadowing of Hodor's death, but that's what it made me connect it to. And if it was, that's really clever. If it's not, then I'm just reading into it too much. But I thought it was kind of cool that that connected at the same time. And lastly, Jon, I have to say, Ygritte really should have seen it coming, that he's not going to kill the horse breeder, because he did the same thing with her when he first meets her. He's told that he has to kill her, and he's got the sword at her throat, and she's like, yeah, strike true. And the guy does the same thing. He's like, yeah, it looks sharp. And he wants it to be quick and painless, and Jon just makes him wait. And it must be just awful to have to wait for that. And I mean, finally, Ygritte does the job for him, but it's just so frustrating to watch. And Ygritte, like, come on, you should have seen it coming. He did the same thing with you. So, and that was kind of his first scene meeting her, and then his last scene, with them as a couple, really, before they end up, before she dies. So. It's just a little bit of symmetry there in the storytelling, which I thought was super cool.
Great point.
I'm sure you guys have lots to talk about the last scene, and I've heard so many great comments from so many people, so I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say about it. But I just have a really hard time watching it every time. But it's really amazing TV, and it's great storytelling, and I think they did a really good job with it. So
I agree.
All right, thanks so much, and I look forward to hearing you guys talk about the Red Wedding. Have a good one.
Thanks so much for your message, Lady Caroline. Lots of great points, and I look forward to hearing from you again real soon. All right, that's our show, episode 71. Thanks for listening, everybody, and a huge thanks to all of our awesome guests for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me back.
Fun.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you guys for letting me be the only girl a part of this awesome guys podcast.
You're just like
awesome.
Cersei, surrounding yourself with powerful men.
Classic. Yeah, it's really good to have all you guys back on. And Johnny, great to have you on for the first time. We'll have to have you back sometime if you're willing. Yeah. It's been really good to have you.
Yes, sir.
Hell yeah. So next episode, we'll be covering Season 3, Episode 10, the season finale, Misa. So give it a watch and send us your thoughts. We'd love to read them on air. If you'd like to call, you can always reach us at 813-JOFFREY. That's 813-563-3739.
And if you'd like to write in, you can email us at
our new email address, ravens@gameofmicrophones.com.
Check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/GOM
podcast.
Impslap! We're also on Twitter and Instagram at GOM Podcast.
You can give us a like or your feedback on iTunes. Make sure you give us a like on the Facebook page. Ratings and reviews mean everything.
Kristen, and other Podcastica hosts are continuing their coverage of Game of Thrones over at their new podcast, House Podcastica. They have released a new episode covering Game of Thrones Season 3, Episode 9, The Rains of Castamere. You can find that at housepodcastica.com or by searching for House Podcastica on your favorite podcast platform. All right, everybody, that's our show.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, I totally missed that. Thanks for listening.
Old eyes.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry, guys.
We were just talking about objectifying women, so welcome back.
Shiv.
Yeah. She just, and the way she held her face, like
artificial dirt
kind
face.
of. Yeah. So.
Edit this out, director.
Oh yeah.
Do 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 do.
Kind of the national
Hello?
stuff.
You guys hear me?
Yep.
I can't hear you guys.
Yes.
I mean, it was called The Dragon and the Wolf, so I mean, it's got to be a wolf head with Rob riding on an ice dragon.
Oh, that makes sense. I get it.
You know him, the Vulture from
The Vulture.
Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Birdman,
Batman.
Bird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Birdman, Batman.
How many winged creatures has he
Vulture.
played?
He doesn't do anything else.
When you take off those clothing, everything stays right in place, doesn't move an inch. But if she's actually Rhaegar as a faceless man in disguise as a woman, then once you take off the face magic glamour, then nothing stays in place. And
I have no idea what the hell you just said.
I'm not the only one.
That's funny as hell. So where are we? I totally got lost there.
yeah, I'm sorry. I kind of like threw a monkey wrench into everything with my crazy tinfoil.
Sir Patrick is drowning in tinfoil.
Quarth or something. I just said it. I just said Quarth. Sir, we're surrounded. Excellent. Then we can attack in any direction.
Francis.
Francis.
If Arya is a faceless man, Sansa's a hairless woman.
It's a nice day to start again.